Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Basement Interviews here with Savage Bowling TV. Scott Gilmore and Chad Lester here live from my basement. And we hope you will be entertained for the next 2.5 hours or so. We've got a great list of guests this afternoon. Brian Nunning, the Indiana State Association manager, Scott Devers, Mark Sullivan. We have EJ Tackett, Mike Dole, the Brunswick rep here in the central location, Brad Miller, and obviously our Hall of Fame color commentator with us, Mike Aulby. And we hope you enjoyed today's telecast or broadcast, and we're going to sit back and relax. Obviously, we got some of our favorite bowling jerseys on. This is one of my favorites. It's a replica of a Cubs road jersey with Javi Baez's number on the back, and Chad, you look like you're sporting our Savage Bowling TV jersey there.
Yeah, this jersey was made famous by our own Jeff Mann.
Yeah.
He wore that on TV when he won the Junior Gold in 2016.
Well, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Also, we got some cheap plugs here. We got our some of our favorite beverages: Body Armor, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and obviously can't go wrong with Miller Lite here in the basement. Right. So if representatives from those companies are watching, hey, jump on board here to Savage Bowling Television. And quite an array of stuff here behind us as well. And we hope you sit back and get your mind off all the stressful situations that we're in. And obviously in my basement, Chad and I are practicing some social distancing here. He's on one end, I'm on the other. But basically, we're just sitting around like everyone else, working from home. Kids are learning school from home, and we're adjusting to that. And I think we're like everyone else right now, Chad. We're missing bowling.
Yeah. We were just talking before we went on the air about how we hope that our league will continue to bowl even if we bowl into June. Just so we can, number one, support the center that we bowl at, and just to be able to bowl. And, our league season got cut short, and we don't want it to be cut short for the whole year.
Well, and I think the other thing is we learn quickly things that we take for granted. And it's not necessarily being able to bowl and do things you enjoy on a regular basis, but it's spending time with your friends. Mm-hmm. and during this time of social distancing and staying at home. And obviously we need to do that. We need to be careful with everything that's going on. But you realize just how important your friends are in your everyday life.
Right. Yeah. And, going back to our kids, my kids were crushed that school was canceled for the last, remaining part of the year. They did so, kids do so much complaining about how they hate school and how they hate being there. But now this happens, my kids have completely changed, their thinking. They want to be there. They miss their friends. They miss their teachers. They're not thrilled about the online learning. So, yeah, that's another thing that people take for granted.
Well, and I think one thing that I've noticed that we've all made adjustments in our everyday lives. And one thing that I've made is I'm a huge sports fan, and we don't have sports right now.
Right.
And I find myself doing more things with my family, which I think is a great thing. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky to have a son that loves to play basketball and catch a baseball and do things like that. And I've been doing a lot more of that. My TV viewing is probably down 90%. And one thing I think I was told by one of my former bosses, he's like, during this time, you're going to find a lot of things around your house you don't like.
Yeah.
And I've probably done more work around my house in the last 3 weeks than I've probably done in the last 6 months combined. So anything that you can do right now to take your mind off the stress and everything is I think hugely beneficial.
Yeah, and I've told my kids, my youngest is, I'm bored. Well, this is your time to get creative, learn new things, try to invent something, stuff like that. Get creative, and they've kind of started doing that. So we've almost had to flip the hat and try to lead a different life right now, and it's hard.
Yeah, there's nothing working harder in my household right now than my dishwasher.
Yeah.
We've cooked from home every night,
Uh-huh.
basically, and I feel like we're running the dishwasher about every day.
Yeah, we are too.
So it's funny how certain things evolve. What we've been talking about is what's going to be the new normal as we move forward, because are things going to be like they were prior to this happening?
Hmm.
I don't know. I went to the store the other day, and I just find it amazing. There was a lot of people wearing um, masks and so forth, and gloves, and which I think is great. I'm nothing wrong with that
Hmm.
whatsoever. But it's like, wow, we've come to that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just if this goes on as the time goes, that's going to be a new normal. I think, like in anything, this is going to weigh in our minds for some time, but can we move forward as a country and as a society to put this in our rearview mirror? But take the standard precautions, washing our hands and being more
Hmm.
practicing more or better hygiene.
Yeah. Going back to going to the store, I know I've never been afraid to go to the store. I'm not necessarily afraid now, but I'm a lot more conscious about what I touch, and I've always seen people cleaning off their carts, before they take it in. I'm more conscious about doing that. Um, so it's definitely a weird feeling. But I think there's still as we come out of this, there's still gonna be some fear from people for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, and then eventually we're gonna get back to normal. It's just gonna take some time.
Yeah, and obviously, a lot of people, obviously, the state USBC made their decision a few days ago on canceling the remainder of
Hmm.
the state tournament. Obviously, we'll be talking to Brian Nunning here in just a few minutes about that. But the USBC, the national board, has a major decision to make
They do.
here in the very near term, and it'll be interesting to see if they decide to, one, have the event at all, and two, when will it be? Because as much as I'm trying to have as positive as an outlook as possible, but it seems to me, Chad, that
Hmm.
we're months away from having anything come back and into play. And if we do that, how are you going to minimize the number of people? Because I still
Hmm.
think you're going to have some remnants of that. Ooh, we need to be in smaller groups.
Yeah, yeah, and I saw a report, a couple of days ago that the USBC might consider moving the tournament to the fall. But there's some things that aren't very friendly about that, because if you bowl like a September to November time period and then turn around to go in 2021 in the spring, that's a major expense just within 6 months sometimes. Um, I'd imagine a lot of people probably canceled their flights to Reno by this point. So there's a lot to think about, and they've got a huge decision to make.
Yeah, and I think you're finding a little bit is a lot of organizations and I'm talking about the NBA, the NFL,
PBA,
the PBA,
yeah.
the Major League Baseball, and now you have the USBC organization. Who wants to be first? And I
Hmm.
don't know if any of them want to be first
Yeah.
as far as coming back. The NBA and Major League Baseball are the first ones to probably make that step. The NBA is already talking about doing stuff in neutral locations,
Hmm.
obviously, no audience. Even this weekend, it's going to be odd if you're a wrestling fan that WrestleMania
WrestleMania.
is going to be taking
Well,
place in a training facility with no
they
audience.
had it last night. I watched the pre-show of WrestleMania. It's definitely weird watching wrestling with no fans. There was, I think there was only one commentator as well. Um, People said that last night's broadcast of WrestleMania was kind of weird, but it finished strong and it actually ended up being pretty good. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do it tonight.
I'm really curious to talk to EJ about his take on bowling the World Championships with nobody
Oh yeah,
in
that was
in the
weird.
bowling center. It
That
was
was
odd.
really weird.
It was odd,
Very
and
awkward feeling.
it was going to be it's going to be an interesting change
Hmm.
as we move forward, and really nobody right now knows when.
The PBA is going to get back to normal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
For,
ag- go ahead.
yeah, for those of you that are watching right now, feel free in the chat room to start chatting with us. we're going to hopefully give you guys the opportunity to ask our guests some questions as they call in. Especially we're going to get our first guest here in just a matter of moments. But we're going to need to know from you guys if you guys can hear them well.
Well, our first guest here on the first episode of Basement Interviews is none other than the Indiana State Association manager and a driving force really behind live streaming the state USBC events like the Indiana Scratch Classic, the Indiana State Masters, the Queens. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do this year, but did last year. Brian Nunning. And Brian, we have you on the phone. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott and Chad. Appreciate being a part of this. Thank you for what you guys do.
Well, we appreciate you taking some time this afternoon to chat with us. I know it's not sometimes always under the best circumstances of the situation that we have around here, but before we get involved in a lot of that discussion, just, for those out there watching and listening, describe your role as the association manager with the Indiana State USBC.
Sure. Let me give a little bit of background. It might help people understand a little bit more. I'll tell you, we've got a great group of ladies and gentlemen on the Indiana State USBC Board of Directors. That group has adopted and embraced a working model for the association. It's a governance and operations model. So if you would think of myself as a CEO, part of my job is to report to the board just like a CEO would to a company. Okay. And that's part of the governance. Along with the president, the assistant association manager, and myself, we help facilitate the board in their strategic planning. And the board really embraces, what do we do and how are we going to do it and what's the plan, short term and long term. Once they have those plans, it's my job as the association manager to implement that strategic plan through managing the operations of the association. So that's incorporated along with the group. We've got a passionate and dedicated staff team. It's our tournament managers. It's our webmaster. It's a large group of team of individuals that help make the day-to-day operations run. So it's my job to oversee that, make sure we have consistency, and try to make sure we're delivering the best class events in the country for us, for the state. Ultimately, then the last piece of that is managing the association's finances. So that kind of sums up what I do as an association manager.
Well, everybody wants to know your decision for the state tournament was made just a few days ago. How difficult was that decision for you and the entire board to cancel the remainder of the state tournament?
I'll tell you what, it's something that we agonized over for weeks, for days. We had some emergency board meetings. The staff met on a quite regular basis to put together suggestions and plans for the board. In some aspects, it was an easy decision. The fact that we know what needed to be done, the fact that it's the safety of our bowlers, our partners in the industry, just our communities, people in our communities in Indiana. It's the right thing to do, right, to cancel. So from that standpoint, it was an easy decision. We recognize, while this was inconveniences and a lot of unhappy folks with this, that is small in comparison to people losing their lives as we have in the country going on now. The tough part of that decision, the very tough part, is we take very seriously as the leaders here in Indiana. We want to grow the sport. We want to promote the sport, which is what you guys do a tremendous job in helping us do with this live streaming. But we also have a responsibility to protect the sport as well. And we recognize the impact, on the state association, the impact on our locals and our bowling centers who's hosting this event. It's going to have an impact. But even larger than that, we're worried about the impact on the industry long term. Bowling centers' doors are closed right now, and centers this is a rough time of the year. They're normally building funds going into the summer months, and we're worried about what's going to happen to the industry and the sport as a whole. So that was a very tough decision for us to have to make this decision.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Brian, was there any thought of extending the tournaments, maybe having them take place during the summer?
Yes. Yeah. That was our first choice. As we started into this thing and, the very first weekend, we tried not to cancel the very first weekend we did. We wanted to try to hold that weekend. We were going to cancel the next 2 weekends, and we got some phone calls from some folks that I believe contacted some health departments, and they called us wanting to know what we were doing and why we were doing it. So we unfortunately had to make a decision on a Friday to even cancel that weekend. We knew that made it tough on our bowlers, but we just a tough decision all around. We looked at what to do was best. So moving forward, yeah, we looked at extending things out. We tried to see how that overlaps with other tournaments. Take the youth and the Indiana Kentucky All-Stars. What did that mean? What does it mean for our events? And ultimately, we recognize even if we extend it, a lot of people called us and said, hey, we want you to extend it. We want to bowl.
Oh, cool.
We also know the financial hardships that's coming too, that
Sure.
it may be difficult for people to come and bowl this summer.
Right.
Yeah, once we get back to whatever normal is, how do you feel these changes will, this changes strategies and protocol for future events?
Well, I wished I had a crystal ball. I'll tell you, I wished I had a crystal ball a few weeks ago.
Right.
The great thing about this governance and operation model that this board has put in place and embraced and using, we have short-term and long-term planning with an eye on the bigger picture, and that's promoting and growing the sport and protecting the sport. So from that perspective, I don't see much change. We're always looking at what's those best opportunities. However, I think it's going to change some of our discussions and things we look at within that scope. In the past, we've talked about such things as tornadoes taking out a center and affecting one event.
Mm-hmm.
When we have something that takes out all of our income or all of our tournaments, all of our events for 1 year, that's probably going to change how we come about some things and look at some things.
Well, and when you talk about protocol and so forth, who is that a large conversation with the entire board, or is that up to 2 or 3 people that have those types of duties within the board?
Sure. So again, back to that operations governance, the board has a lot of the decisions about what are we going to do and when are we going to do it. Once those decisions are made, the operations team tries to make those things happen. But we don't work. This is not a Brian Nunning show. This is not a president's show in the state. This is an Indiana State USBC team, and we've got a tremendous group of board and staff that come together as a team that help each other. I'm a big believer. One head is better than 2 heads when you're thinking about something. So, obviously we've got 10 or 12 people working on it. You get a better decision.
Right. Well, let's move on to some more positive things here, Brian. And you've been a big advocate of the live streaming of the state's major events, the Indiana Scratch Classic, the State Masters, State Queens, and even the Indiana Kentucky All-Stars. Obviously, we're extremely thankful for that because we're involved with all of those events. But why do you feel that's so important to the future of not only the events but the Indiana State USBC?
Well, I'll tell you, Scott, and we're really pleased we're partnered with you guys and the stuff that you guys do. It's first-class events all the time. So we're pleased to be a part of it with you. I'll tell you, that really goes back to my younger days. I was raised to always be thinking about continually improving yourselves, finding ways to make lives better for other people. I've always believed technology can help foster those things. As a kid, computers, really anything technology just drove enthusiasm in myself and drove me to be an electrical engineer. So I continue to this day to try to find enthusiasm in that technology. But I'll tell you what, really, all this credit for what we're doing and you guys helping us with the technology or the live streaming, that credit all really goes to the board of directors and their strategic planning.
Right.
In that part, this board has bought into it 100%. They have 4 strategic imperatives in their strategic planning. One of them is leadership development. The second one is technology. The third one is communications. And the fourth one is events and tournaments. So as you can see, really this live streaming fits into the technology piece and into the communications piece. So by and far, it fits right into what this board is doing and their strategic plan of how we are to move forward and promote the sport.
Yeah, have you been able to gauge feedback from the bowlers about our live streaming these events?
We get quite a bit of feedback from them, and it is always all just absolutely great feedback. The ones that's watching it are listening to it or praising it. We did the Indiana Kentucky All Stars last year, right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
Yeah.
the feedback from the Kentucky folks, you had not seen it in our other events, and the parents that it was held in Indiana. It alternates every other year between Indiana and Kentucky. And with it being in Indiana, there was a lot of family members that wasn't present at the center, and they were able to watch some of their kids from Kentucky bowl. So the feedback from Kentucky was tremendous.
Yeah, and I know the Indiana Kentucky All Stars last year. The amount of comments on our social media came from families of the bowlers who were from Kentucky. So that was really cool to see that.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing, Brian, as you had mentioned too, as technology changes, along with the bowlers itself, because you're seeing a lot of the new younger bowlers bowling a lot more in your state events, your singles events, and so forth. How do you plan on keeping up with the changes, and what discussions have you had as you're trying to mainstream more to reach the youth as they come into being more the focal point of your events?
Yeah, and that's key. We always say, and everybody believes that the youth is our future. We've got to maintain our current pace. We've got to maintain our adults as bowling and cut back on the losses that we're having there. But we definitely need to keep the youth engaged and focused. They have plenty of other opportunities in other sports nowadays to pick from. But being part of our strategic plan again, being part of our imperatives, we're having those discussions with the board all the time. Mm-hmm. We always welcome input from our bowlers. If you've got any suggestions that you'd like to see something new, but we've implemented many new things, such as our digital signage at our events, our team app application that mm-hmm. people, no charge can get real-time information from our tournaments right to their phones or our email accounts, to our Facebook account. We try to really promote and do a lot of communications across the Facebook. A good example of that, I was actually called by the gentleman that was going to be presenting at the USBC National Convention, talking about social media, and USBC had recognized Indiana State USBC as a leader in what we're doing in the amount of drive that we get across our Facebook account. And he called me and asked questions and wanted to know how we were doing it, what we would put in place, what's our structure, and that was going to be shared at the national convention. So hopefully that still happens later this year, and I'm looking forward to be there and be a part of that discussion.
Yeah, and that's fantastic.
That is awesome.
Couple of quick questions here for you as we obviously get ready to wrap up your time here. But, obviously we're talking about how imperative it is for the board to acquire sponsorships now with obviously the state tournament not running its course as normal. How can business become partners with the Indiana State USBC? And if they did, how do you see that benefiting those businesses?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to need that. It's probably going to be imperative. Right now it's just too early to tell what the impact of this is going to have. There's no doubt it's going to be an impact. It's fortunate that this board and the state have operated the way they have, and we've got some emergency funds, but as always, you need to deplete those. You've got to find ways to get those back. You never know when the next one of these emergencies is going to hit. So it's going to be a struggle for us to spend money on technology, where we've been pretty freely doing that. Mm-hmm. We had an emergency board meeting yesterday, and they've already cut back on some expenses and some items. So, and rightfully so, we've got to do that to protect the association. So it's going to be very imperative going forward. If folks are interested, they can obviously contact me. Our Savage Bowling TV is our partner in this live streaming. Can contact them as well. I think the benefit is huge, guys. When we've been doing this, and you guys well know, and mm-hmm. we've had people from Australia and all over the world really joining in to these live streamings. So I think there's a great benefit in this to our partners, and we're happy to work with them. If they've got ideas, we'll listen. We'll be promoting them. We do that with Motive Bowling. We're really pleased to have Motive Bowling as our official ball sponsor of the Indiana State USBC. Mm-hmm. And, we do that with our Facebook and pictures and a backdrop, and just everything we do has got Motive around it. So we appreciate them and all of our sponsors that we have.
Yeah. One quick question here, Brian, before we let you go. Obviously, the state tournament being canceled. Your next really event was the Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Yes.
What is the current situation with that?
We're currently working on that. We're trying to be in touch with our hotel property there in Indianapolis, where it's going to be at. I've got some phone calls and some emails out. I know there's some things going on there in Indy as well with the Brown Plaza and the current plans for the next month or so here. I did talk with them on the phone briefly yesterday, and it sounds like we're still going to be in shape for our, towards the end of June, middle of June timeframe for that. We'll just have to see what comes as the governor's executive orders get released, hopefully here in the next few weeks or next month. We'll see how things shake out. For now, we're moving forward with that. Obviously, we'll keep everybody posted if that changes due to any restrictions out.
Well, Brian, we thank you so much for your time, and I know this is really a difficult situation in a lot of ways, and I think you guys have done a great job handling everything and all the responsibilities that go involved with it. Thanks so much for your time for joining us today.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you for the opportunity, guys.
All right.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, Brian Nunning, the Indiana Association manager, and you could. I think there's a lot, Chad, that goes on behind closed doors than most bowlers you really know about,
Right.
and how many different hats these guys wear, and the responsibilities, and really, the financial wherewithal it takes to operate the state USBC.
That's right. We've had other conversation with Brian and the board, and they've really kind of enlightened us about what they go through to get a tournament ready and the financial impacts and all that. But you can definitely hear the disappointment in his voice that they had to cancel everything, and we are where we are right now.
When you think about a lot of things, obviously they're sending out the results, and they're going to pay out who those have bowled and so forth. But you really think about the this severity of everything that's going on. I mean, there could potentially be champions not crowned in so many events in 2020.
Right.
And obviously some of your marquee events are postponing things back towards the end of this year in hopes that a lot of this is in our rearview mirror. But a lot of bowlers here in the state don't realize how much money the state tournament makes that goes back into everything that they try to do. And live streaming is just a very small part of it.
Very small part of it. They just invested a lot of money in all new computer equipment to where if they're running a tournament in Richmond, Indiana, and they have a problem there, somebody can remote in, from South Bend and fix the problem. They spent a lot of money this year just trying to get those networking capabilities up. So, as we know, they've all merged now, all the associations. So they had to get, the youth up and the women all on the same, level.
Right. And I kind of, what you see at the tournaments is kind of like what I tell my kids when I coach baseball or basketball. I always tell them that practice is where you learn and you get better. The game itself or the tournament itself is where you showcase all that practice, or in the board's terms, all those meetings and investments and preparation. The bowlers see just a very small part of what really goes on.
That's right. And you want to get back to the bowlers who are probably disappointed in themselves that they're not going to get the bowl state tournament to have a shot at a title. The Queens didn't, the Queens was canceled the night before we were supposed to go down there and live stream it. A lot of disappointment there. So everybody's disappointed. It's from the board to the bowling centers who are the most impacted to the bowlers.
Right. Yeah, and this is the first time for me personally, the first time, I maybe 30 years that I haven't bowled the state tournament. I mean, I never missed it, no matter where it went. And fortunately, been healthy every year to do that.
Yeah.
And now this year is the first year that I won't bowl, and the first year that I won't be bowling the USBC national event in I don't know how many years. So a lot of things impacted, and And again, like you said, Chad, you could just hear it's a little bit of the disappointment, but also knowing that they made the right decision.
Oh, they definitely did with what with everything that's going on. It had to be done. There was no choice, especially when the governors, doing their executive orders and telling everybody to stay in and things like that. It was a good decision in the end.
All right, we're going to try to get to our next guest here, and he is Chad. You have quite a bit of background information on our next guest, and it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say. And go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, the next guest on the phone is Scott Devers. A little bit of background information on him. He's the Indiana Bowling Center Association manager, proprietor of Mike Aulby's Arrowhead Bowl. He's an Indiana Hall of Famer, a past PBA member, winning 4 titles. On the phone with us today is Scott Devers. Scott, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Good, good. As I said in your intro, you're proprietor of Mike Aulby's Arrowhead Bowl. How did that relationship with Mike evolve into you becoming, partners with Mike?
Well, back in 1996, in the fall of 96, I was interviewing for a position at Royal Penn Leisure Centers with Jim Doty and Don Mitchell. And Don mentioned that Mike was looking to purchase a bowling center, and that if I would have any interest, he would keep me in mind for a potential partnership with Mike. And so the Royal Penn interview did not come about to the way I'd liked it to. So I went ahead and I told him that I'd be definitely interested. Then the center in Lafayette, which was Arrowhead Bowl at the time, opened up, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now let's talk about COVID-19. Unfortunately, we're all in a stay-at-home order here in Indiana. How is this affecting your business?
Well, it's definitely had some negative effects to it. Fortunately for us, I've got a skeleton crew working, and we are, of course, keeping our distances, but we're doing some projects that have been necessary. And so, unfortunately, everybody else has, for the most part at this time, been laid off. Mm-hmm. So we are hoping that things will change sooner rather than later and reopen for our public.
Right. How do you think this is going to affect the bowling industry long term?
That's to be determined yet. I know that the short term, it's hard on everybody across the country. We're all struggling. But, of course, we were going into our slow period anyway, in April, May. So I'm not sure if it's going to be as nearly as negative effect to it as it would have been if it was in our prime time or in the winter season. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure there is going to be some negative effect somewhere down the line, whether it's your small mom and pop operations that can't stay afloat, or even some of your other big partners that just won't be able to keep all of their centers open. Time is not sure at this time.
Sure. Now, I was, when 2008 the recession happened, then I was in the bowling business, and I saw how it affected us. Does this compare at all?
This is coming on so fast. I don't know if there's a good comparison. This has been very swift. And back in 2008, yeah, everybody struggled and there was a recession. But it was over a long period of time to recover. Hopefully the experts are saying that this is going to be, once we do start to recover, that the stock market and business is going to rebound very, very swiftly.
Go ahead. You want? I thought you had this question. Your leagues are probably about 4 weeks away from being done at this point, when all this happened. How are they handling it? Are you expecting them to finish, or are you allowing them to cancel? Let us know what's going on there.
Well, I'm taking this a league by league basis. So each one of the league officers are reaching out to me, and they're picking my brain. I'm picking their brain, and some have only had a couple weeks. Some had up to 6 weeks left. So we're going to take it case by case. And in the best case scenario, that they come back and they finish their leagues. That would be best for us and of course our customers. But worst case scenario, this this COVID-19 continues out a little ways and nobody's interested in coming back and completing. So I'm going to do whatever is the best for each situation, whatever that might be.
Hi, Scott. You're involved with the Indiana Bowler Centers Association. Tell us what your position is and what they do for bowling centers and the bowlers itself.
Well, I've been with the IBCA now as the association manager for about 8 years. They are the state organization under the BPAA, which is the Bowling Proprietors Association of America. So we provide a lot of networking opportunities, educational activities. Of course, the BPAA has its biggest showcase each year at International Bowl Expo. It provides a lot of online training and on-demand training. In the state of Indiana, of course, we administer and manage Indiana high school bowling, Indiana middle school bowling, and so there's a lot of different aspects to it. Along with the BPAA, the IBCA supports the Smart Buy program, which is group purchasing programs where all the bowling proprietors can take advantage of discounts and benefits for their bowling centers.
The Indiana High School Bowling Program is under the IBCA umbrella. How do you see the future of high school bowling, and how much has this impacted its future too as well? Because we've had to cancel the middle school program.
Well, yes, we just recently, last week, we canceled the middle school program in its entirety. So it's going to have, of course, a negative effect there. The high school program, we're not sure how it's going to affect because hopefully this will end prior to the start of that season. That season doesn't begin until mid to late October. So that is still to be determined, but it's definitely hampered our middle school program. Now with the high school program, we've seen a slight decrease in school participation over the last 4 or 5 years. We did reach a plateau of 203 schools in the state that participated. I think we're down into the low 190s. But recently, our president, Jason Friedenberg, he put a task force together, and we're looking at other ways to generate more interest and turn the slow decline back around to an increase in interest in the state. So the task force is currently meeting. Of course, they're meeting over telemarketing or telecommuting. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a little while before we have any answers there.
How have you seen, I know in its infancy, as far as the state finals is concerned, you used to have a television crew come in. Do you feel like, I know now we've done the live stream here with us for the last 4 years or so, do you find that becoming a little more advantageous to reaching the younger student, and obviously because they're watching through YouTube and those channels?
It has been. I mean, when we televised it through Hometown Sports several years ago, there really was no archive back then. So you either watched it live or you didn't get to have a chance to watch it. Now that it's being web streamed and archived, not only can people watch it live, but then they can watch it at any time that they wish. And it's always there for them to go back and review it. And it has definitely brought a lot of attention. I think it's a great piece to our program to be able to allow aunts and uncles and grandparents that cannot make it to the actual state finals. It gives them the opportunity to either watch it live or watch it down the road at another time. It's a great benefit for our program.
Well, one thing that I find amazing, I know you said schools' participation is down a little bit, but when you're at the high school state finals and this past year at Anderson, and you watch the volume of spectators and the parents and the grandparents and the energy, I think if more people actually take the time to go to one of those events, I think they'll be amazed at just how strong the sport is in the high schools itself with those schools that are participating. You feel the same way there?
Oh, it is definitely a great atmosphere. Both they're the two semi-states that we host, as well as the state finals. The atmosphere is extremely electric. The stands are full. As a matter of fact, they are packed to capacity, and it's just a great environment for not only the spectators but the bowlers alike. They love it.
Yeah, Scott, let's go back to your PBA career. You won 4 titles on tour. You were on tour, what, 10, 11 years? Is that correct?
12 if you include my early years as well.
Okay, so what were your best memories of being on tour?
Well, actually being able to compete.
Hmm.
My first few years, I was not very good at all, and I was not very competitive. Of course, those are your growing years, so a lot of people go through that unless you're an absolute superstar. But and I started in '84, and then finally in '86, late '86 and early '87, I started to turn the tide, and I was able to start competing at a better level. I won 2 times in '87,
Hmm.
and then I won a couple of times thereafter. The experience is just absolutely awesome when you're able to bowl against the best bowlers that you've dreamed about bowling against forever. Not only now I'm partners with Mike Aulby, but I was able to bowl against Earl Anthony and Roth and Holman and Walter Ray, all the biggest names in the sport.
Hmm.
I was able to compete against, and that is just something that I'll go to my grave in enjoying that I was able to do that, just because not everybody can say that they did that.
Right, right. And you said that, the first few years you weren't very good. Now the guys on tour today talk about the learning curve. What is the learning
Hmm.
curve then versus now? What was it like? What did you have to do to compete at a higher level?
Well, people don't understand, and they might see it, but they don't understand it because they're only seeing 90 minutes on a
Hmm.
Saturday or a Sunday. But you're bowling in a different bowling center each week. You're bowling under multiple lane conditions. You've got so many different aspects to the game that are different than your normal league or your house tournaments. So I think it's just you're finally learning to adapt to those differences in the sport. You're also trying to feel more comfortable with your surroundings and who you're competing against. When you're standing next to Dick Weber or Earl Anthony, you're in awe. You got to be able to put that aside and just focus on your game and what you're trying to accomplish.
Scott, who did you really look up to on tour in your days? We all had guys that we wanted to emulate and compete like. Who were those guys for you on tour?
Well, of course, my dream uh, was competing against Earl Anthony, and I was fortunate. I was able to bowl against him for a few years prior to his retirement. I didn't bowl a lot against him, but I was able to compete on the same lane conditions that he did, so I know how he did as well as how I compared to that. And there was a couple of times I beat him. There was a lot more times that he beat me, but definitely Earl Anthony. And then I do remember one time, it was actually in 1987, bowling the Kodak Invitational. I was standing behind the bleachers watching the other shift bowl with Walter Ray. And Walter he looks at me and he goes, Scott, everybody thinks that your game is not that good. He says, but I'm here to tell you, you have a good game. And I don't know why he said that, but next thing you know, I ended up making the top 24. I rallied, I led the tournament, and then I beat Marshall Holman for the title of that same tournament. So those are just things like that you'll always remember and cherish.
I'm sure back in those days, it was probably a thrill to beat Marshall Holman.
It was great, especially when Marshall's trying to outthink you and show you up on TV. It was really good to put the hammer to him and beat him.
When did you know that it was time to, move on to something else in your life?
Well, I'd had a back injury. So in 1994, I believe it was, I had back surgery. It was to the point where I couldn't walk anymore. So my back surgery, of course, it went better than it did when I couldn't walk, but I was never the same. So I hung it up in the fall of 1994, and I've never bowled professionally since. I bowled one year of league, and then after that, I hung it up. So I've not technically even thrown a bowling ball since 1995, 96. But at that time, I just knew that it was time when you still have a limp and you just don't feel right. And when you get to the point where you're at the top of your sport and you just can't compete at that same level that you once had, it'll tell you that it's time to hang it up.
Well, I know even though you cannot bowl, when you're a bowler, it's hard to take the desire and out of your body. So you've kind of taken on different roles, and you're very involved in everything. And Scott, we always feel like you're someone that we can lean on with a lot of great information and a lot of great passion. And we enjoy working with you not only in the high school, but just in local bowling every day as well.
Well, I can say that I picked the right sport. Bowling is it's surrounded by the best people in the world. I love doing what I'm doing. I love being a part of the bowling industry and the sport of bowling. And I couldn't have picked a better sport. But thank you for your compliments.
Well, we appreciate your time, Scott, for joining us on our inaugural basement interview show. And again, all the best. And I know when we're done and have this current crisis in our rearview mirror, you're going to be leading the way for what bowling needs to do next.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me on.
All right, take care, Scott.
Thanks,
all
Scott.
the best.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Scott Devers there, proprietor of Mike Aulby's Arrowhead Bowl in Lafayette. But not only is he in our hometown, Chad, but Scott wears a lot of hats,
He does.
and he is one of the guys that's leading this sport into the future.
Yeah, everything he does in the Indiana Bowling Proprietors Association is a lot more than I thought. But we love going to his center. They're always accommodating. He gives us what we need, and we don't ask for a lot, but he's there for us. We're there for him, and he does a great job of what he does.
Yeah, and we are so thankful for Scott. He's kind of been a leader for us and an advocate for us. Kind of stepped up to the plate and says, "Hey, we're going to give you a shot for the Indiana High School Bowling State Finals." And we know our first one was not the best, right? But we grew, and he allowed us to grow with that event. And it's a very big part of what we do when we do our events. And Scott's a really good, honest person, and anything that he's going to give you is going to be constructive. And how can we help you advance and make things better?
Right. You mentioned high school bowling. That's where we got our start. 2015. They reached out to us and said, "Hey, want to live stream it?" We're like, "Sure." We just used a couple of webcams and
yeah, it was
and
rough.
it was not a very good broadcast, but
Scott Savage was really another big. Scott stepped up and said, "Hey, let's live stream this thing. We'd like an opportunity to provide coverage for this product." And so Scott Savage was a huge part of that too, back in those days. And obviously, there's a lot of Scotts involved.
There is, and yeah, and Scott helped us get to where we are now, really.
Right.
With upgrading equipment and things like that. So, we definitely can't thank both Scotts enough.
Yeah, and it's been a real big honor to be involved in the high school bowling state finals, and we get a lot of compliments. Obviously, we're going to be our own worst critic when it comes to that broadcast. But however, it's so cool to hear stories of, the kids come up to me, and my grandma and grandpa are watching from, back home because they couldn't make it down, and or they live out of state
or out of the country.
It's really cool to be involved in being a part of that, and to what we feel is give off positive anything that we can do that's positive for the sport of bowling. We love to be involved in that.
Yeah, one of the best things is is when you have a bowler or a parent or whoever come up to you out on site and saying, "Hey, thanks for doing this. Um, my child's grandma lives in Mexico or whatever, and they were able to watch today, and that makes it all worth it for us."
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. And again, we've been able to hone our skills a little bit with that, and it's allowed us to get better in some of the other events that we do. But want to get on to our next guest. This gentleman was inducted into the Indianapolis City Hall of Fame in 2005. He's won numerous events: the Shootout at the Fort, the Ebonite Lafayette Open, the Indiana State Masters, and he has numerous other Indiana State tournament titles, and he's currently representing the brand of Radical on the PBA 50 Tour. Mark Sullivan. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Scotty. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, I wanted to ask, what is Mark doing during this time of social distancing and being at home?
Well, fortunately, Scott, my position is considered essential. We're in the equipment rental business, and I'm one of the lucky guys. I get to go to work every day still. Obviously, we're not as busy as we would typically be, but it's still, I'm able to maintain my routine, getting up in the morning and going to work. And but other than that, I've been still work out a lot, tinkering with my grip a little bit. I've got a drill press and basically a pro shop in my garage. So. And just doing some visualization stuff since you can't actually get out there and physically practice.
Well, I know you've had the honor of a big announcement earlier on this year, and your recent announcement of you being inducted into the 2020 Indiana State Bowling Hall of Fame. Describe your emotions when you were notified of that induction.
Yeah, a tremendous honor when you think about all the people that I had grew up admiring bowling in the state of Indiana who are in that league. I mean, I could go on and on with the names, but it's definitely an elite group of people that get to go in there, and it was a huge deal for me to go in, and especially getting to go in with my good friend Steve Lang. Steve and I have bowled together for years. Steve's been a mentor for me. He's a few years older than me, so he actually asked me to bowl some stuff with him, the state tournament and stuff, when I was early in my career. So that was a big ego boost to me, and it made a huge impact on me getting to compete with better bowlers.
Well, let me read some names for you here, okay? And let this sink in for a few seconds. And Bill Dorman, Don Johnson, Chris Schenkel, Dick Weber, Mike Aulby, Mark Thayer, Tim Mack. Those are just some of the few names in the Hall of Fame. And now Mark Sullivan has his name next to them. How surreal is that?
It's incredible, and not something, and I know it's not a cliche, but you hear people say this all the time that get these kind of honors. Is it never dawned on me when I was young and competing. I was just out there having fun, doing what I love to do, and enjoying the guys that I was bowling with or competing against. I mean, it was all about the passion that I had for bowling and the desire I had to compete at a high level. So, but yeah, it's just unbelievably humbling to think that I could be in the same hall with those guys.
Hey, Mark, how's it going? It's Chad. How are you?
Hey, Chad. Good.
Good. You've always been known as one of the nicest guys in our sport, along with one of the most talented. Is this something you've modeled yourself after?
Not particularly. I'm lucky. I had good parents, and I had two older brothers and a younger sister. So, family was a big deal to us, and we were taught to treat each other the way we want to be treated. But I've also had the good fortune of having a lot of good role models right out of juniors. A guy named Chuck Sampson chose me to bowl on his team, and it was the Trophy House bowling team, and guys like Mike Aulby had gotten on that team. All the young, kind of hot shot guys coming out of juniors, Chuck took under his wing and really just showed you how to be more than a good bowler, but a good sport on and off the lanes. Guys like Mike Aulby, I got to bowl the state tournament with Mike and see how he interacted with people. Steve Lang, Jeff Circle, Larry Leap, these guys were mentors and again, great role models for me.
Well, you've won your share, I should say, fair share of titles. Is there any titles that stick out more than others for you?
Well, they're all special, as you can imagine, but I got to thinking about this, and I was lucky enough to win the Bowling This Month magazine tournament, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. It was a companion tournament. It still is a companion tournament that runs with the USBC national event, and we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I bowled my first set. It's a 4-game deal. I bowled 4 games and shot about 850. Chris Curry, I put my street shoes on. Chris Curry and Mike Lish begged me to bowl again with them. They said, hey, no, we want to bowl one more squad. And we did. And I don't remember my score, but I won that thing running away, and it was a nice hit. That one sticks out because it was kind of a fluke. I was not planning on bowling, and those guys talked me into it. And that was that's a big deal to win that one.
One thing I was curious, you got a few years on me age-wise. You probably don't look like it, but how is it different for you to compete today? How much the game has changed in your tenure as a player, because you're still highly competitive.
You hear that all the time about the game changing a lot, and it's true. I guess it has changed a lot, but the thing that hasn't changed is the most skilled players still win the most tournaments. And look at Jason Belmonte. Yes, he has revolutionized bowling with the two-hand delivery, and no different than Mark Roth did back in the early 70s,
right,
when he came out with the power game. So, yes, the game has evolved, equipment has changed, lane conditions have changed, but it's still the most skilled player wins. Mm-hmm. I see it every week on the PBA 50 Tour. Walter, Norm, Parker, Pete, Ron Moore. Those guys they're better than everyone else. They have been for a long time. If you're lucky enough to beat one of those 5 guys in a given week, you have had a great week. So yeah, bowling balls have changed, lane conditions have changed, the evolution of the two-hander, but it's only making bowling better, in my opinion. I know we hear the arguments about the two-hand, the controversial issue, whether it's technically legal. And I don't care. Personally, I don't care. I want to see bowling continue to grow. I want to see it evolve. And I want more people to bowl. I want to see our sport grow.
All right, we have Mark Sullivan, not only a great local bowler, but a PBA 50 Tour bowler here as well on the first episode of the Basement Interviews here on Savage Bowling TV. Chad, go ahead.
Yeah, you turned 50 a few years ago. Now you've turned your attention to the PBA 50 Tour. I've always said you're like a fine wine. You get better with age. Has the senior circuit re-energized your passion for the sport?
100%. It was just such a lift to join the PBA 50 Tour for me, and realize that, my dream my whole life was to be a professional bowler. I thought at 8 years old that was what I was going to do. And then when I tried it when I was in my early 20s, I just wasn't very competitive. A lot of improvement. I needed to make a lot of improvements. And then life kind of got in the way. I wanted to get married, wanted to have children, and I needed a steady income. The great thing about the PBA 50 Tour is I don't need the income. It's nice when you do win some money on the PBA 50 tour, but that's not my main source of income. I have a full-time job. I'm lucky enough that my employer lets me go out and compete about 6 to 8 tournaments every year.
Right.
But it's just so much fun. And I know it's more fun because I'm competitive too, but there's also so much more camaraderie now on the PBA 50 tour than I remembered there being on the kids tour when I was, trying to crack in my early 20s. So it's good.
Right,
Yeah.
right, absolutely. And with bowling on hold right now, how tough has it been knowing that the PBA 50 tour should be ready to start here pretty soon, and now we don't know what the future holds?
Yeah, it's really disappointing. I would have been leaving April 15th for a 2-week swing in Florida, two PBA 50 national stops and a PBA 50 regional. So, and I make this comment all the time. Bowling the PBA 50 tour is the funnest thing I get to do in my life. It's what I look forward to doing. I work hard at it. I practice a couple of times a week for it because it's so much fun for me. So, yeah, not getting to do this is disappointing, but obviously we've got more important things to worry about right now with everything going on than the bowling. But it's still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't disappoint me that we're not getting to do it.
Hey, I wanted to let you know, Curtis and Jill Woods here posted that you love wine, and they asked ask him how much he loves wine. So you want to divulge into that a little bit?
Be more than happy to. I got to take a wine tour. They call that there's a name for it. It's a wine tour. So we got to go to all these fantastic wineries in Sonoma County, and there was, to me, there was no difference between the best wine and the worst wine. They all tasted like chalk to me. So, not a wine guy.
Well, you caught me off guard with that one, but they also chimed back in and says one of his nicknames is Gilligan. Are you allowed to describe that a little bit more for us?
Oh yeah, that's a great story. Young guy bowling on tour. I go into the PBA truck, and back in that day, you had 150 players. Not 150, but you had somewhere between 100 and 150 guys bowling in the Rabbit on Monday. So, and then you had the 150 man field, regular field. So you had 300 guys drilling balls. That PBA truck was just a zoo in there. So I go in, I grab my ball, I write my name on the top of it real quick with a Sharpie like you were supposed to do. I set it up there by the drill press, and Bill Hall's standing there, and he's got no time for anybody. So he looks at my box and he goes, "Did you write your name on there?" I go, "Yeah." I said, "I wrote it right there." He looks at the box because I kind of scribbled it. He looks at the box. He goes, "Gilligan?" I said, No, Sullivan. He goes, "Not anymore."
Not anymore.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Is there really anything left on the to-do list for you in the sport of bowling before you call it, or have any intention of calling it a career?
Oh yeah, big time. I really want to win a PBA title, and our USBC national team. We have been knocking on the door to win a state title for the last 10 years. I mean, we've had several top tens. Last year, I think we were 5th. We were 3rd one year. We just got a great solid team. We line up off of each other, and not to mention great bowlers, Eddie Frederick, Langer, Bowerly, Jeff Lowe, whoever works in that spot. Danny Clark had been on the team there for a couple of years, and but that would be on the top of my list too, because it's a team thing, and we've gelled real good together. We communicate well. It's one of those things I really look forward to doing, and I think we can still, even at our advanced stages in life here.
Right. Well, we got a couple of quick things here before we let you sneak away. We got a couple of fan questions. You have a few things to give away. Chad, we got an autographed jersey, and obviously we'll get in touch with those people, and we'll figure out how we can get those sent to them. But a couple of fan questions. Chad, we're going to give away a signed jersey from Mark Sullivan here.
Yeah, the signed jersey is going to go to Justin Hauser, and he asked, have you ever got any questions about how you look like Brian Voss?
That is a huge insult to Brian Voss.
And for those of you that are watching, we have a side-by-side picture of Brian Voss and Mark Sullivan.
I don't know. Both of you never get old. I mean, you guys look like you're, in your 20s. I mean, drinking the Fountain of Youth every night, is that it?
I'd like to have Brian Voss's career, I can tell you that.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'd do that with him in a New York minute.
And you also said you had a Radical Ludicrous to give away to another fan. We have another fan question.
Yeah, this one comes from Jackson Cross, and he wants to know what your dream lineup would be. So who are 4 guys you would want to bowl with?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to say John Barley, Steve Lang, Eddie Frederick, and a player to be named later.
Well, I wanted to say something too. As you mentioned, your pal Danny here not that long ago won his first PBA 50 regional title by shooting 300 in the championship round.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something. I have been around great bowlers my whole life. I've seen great bowling at the top level, and what Danny did on Sunday in the match play portion of that tournament was as good a bowling as I've ever witnessed in my entire life. He hit the pocket for 10 straight games. He was one of 2 lefties bowling, but he owned the 1-2 for about 3.5 hours. It was amazing. It was like he fell asleep, state of unconsciousness there, and just executed flawlessly for 10 games. And shot 300 the final game to cap it off.
We have a fan request. Mike Wolf wants a lock of that hair, he said. I'd like to have the whole darn thing. I'll be honest with you. I ain't got a lick.
Same here.
Just tell Mr. Wolf to let me know the next time he's going out of town. I'll drop it off down there to Abby.
All right, before we let you go, my favorite part of our interview, basement interviews, Chad, if we're going to have 12 frames with Mark Sullivan, I'm going to ask you 12 quick questions, and you give me the first answer that comes to the top of your mind. Are you ready?
Perfect. I'm ready.
Horror or comedy movie?
Comedy movie, Stripes.
Favorite ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
What was your favorite cartoon growing up?
Mr. Magoo.
Do you tweet?
No.
Life is on the line and you need 1 strike. Who you got?
John Barley.
Favorite ball of all time?
Ooh, Wired.
Favorite musical artist?
Rolling Stones.
What's your biggest fear?
Drowning.
You get dinner with 3 famous people. Who are they? If we made them, who are they?
I would say Donald Trump. That's for Chad and Dave. Mick Jagger and Roger Staubach.
All right. If we made a movie about your life, who stars as Mark Sullivan?
Marty Feldman.
Favorite movie? Favorite movie?
Young Frankenstein.
All right, last one. Name one place you would like to see host the USBC Open Championship.
Indianapolis, Indiana, Woodland Bowl.
That's 12 frames with Mark Sullivan. Mark, appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Sullivan. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, great to catch up with one of the my most fun guys I get to bowl with in these events and throughout the state. And Mark is, God, he's one of the classier guys I've ever met.
That's right. You know, one of the questions we didn't get to ask him is he's won the Lafayette Open, but it seems like every tournament he's always in contention. And I kind of wanted to find out what his secret was. You know, every year he makes match play and knocks on the door to making the top 4 and maybe winning.
Well, and he's knocking on the door on the PBA 50
He
Tour,
is.
and he's going to win one here sooner or later. And hopefully for him, that the PBA Tour and both sides, the 50 for him obviously, and the regular tour can get back on its feet and get back started. I know there's a lot of guys that are chomping at the bit, and one of those we'll be talking to here soon, and it's going to be interesting to get his thoughts on what he has to say about the current climate of not only the PBA Tour, but what the future sees. And we'll get to talk to him shortly. But again, great to catch up with Mark Sullivan, and now we're going to get on to the rest of our show. But our next guest really doesn't need a whole lot of an introduction. He was a 2012 Ebonite Lafayette Open champion, 2013 PBA Rookie of the Year, 13 PBA Go Bowling titles. He's won 2 majors, the World Championship and the Tournament of Champions. 2016 PBA Player of the Year. He's already, folks, in the top 50 in all-time earnings and already Hall of Fame eligible at the young age of 27. And we're glad to have Mr. EJ Tackett on the show. EJ, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. How y'all doing?
Good.
We're doing great. We're trying to, the hopes was just trying to, bring some entertainment to those that are looking for things to do. There's not a whole lot to watch on television, and it's also nice to catch up with you guys on your time away here right now. And I know a lot of fans are wanting to know what's EJ Tackett doing during all of this social distancing and PBA downtime.
Well, since we've spent so much time away from home over the last year or so, since the new Fox deal and Flow Bowling, we've had a lot of events to bowl. So the house has become pretty messy during that time. Natalie and I aren't home for long stretches of time, so we've been cleaning the house, reorganizing. We remodeled a bathroom, so we've just been keeping ourselves busy, just trying to get the house to come together.
Well, let's look at the current PBA season. You're 5th in total earnings. You're 5th in points. You're tied for 2nd in cashes, 3rd in overall average, and you've made 2 shows. Most people would be, or bowlers would be thrilled with those stats, but how does EJ feel about that season so far?
It's been pretty good. It's kind of the last year's season and this year's season have been so far pretty similar. I've bowled really, really good. I've had a lot of top 5s, made a bunch of shows. Had the 1 win last year, and that's the only thing that's kind of missing over the last 15 months is just wins. I've given myself a lot of opportunities. I've bowled well in a lot of them, and just gotten beaten. And there's nothing you do about that. That's just sports. There's been a couple of times, the World Championships is one where I just didn't bowl good, and those are the things that you can control. But overall, it's been really, really good. I feel like I'm kind of in an ebb and flow of getting into a career. I know this is my 8th year on tour, but if I look back to like 2016, 2017, I basically won every time I was on TV. So now I'm kind of on the other one where I'm performing well most of the time and just not winning. So I feel like you just got to ride the roller coaster. And if I keep bowling well, keep performing well, eventually, things will start going my way and I might win a few times on TV.
Well, before we get into the World Series of Bowling, let's talk about the 2 stops in Indianapolis. Being originally from Huntington, Indiana, how much emphasis do you always put on the tour stop that goes to Indianapolis?
For me, it's basically a major tournament. Just being that close to home and so much history in that building down there, and all the guys that have won. You go down in the bar where they have all the banners hanging of guys that have won in that building, and it's the greatest ever have won there. And it's one of those things where at the end of my career, I don't know if it'll be completely fulfilled if I don't also have a banner hanging in Indianapolis.
How disappointing for you was it coming up 50 pins short of that Indianapolis Open spot?
Yeah, that sucked. That was no fun at all. That's actually individual-wise the best performance I've had in Indianapolis since I've been on tour. I knew I had a really good chance to make the show, and I kind of let it slip away. But during the doubles, Marshall and I obviously bowled really, really well, and wasn't able to compete with Kyle and Jesper. But I think we had around 150 or 200 pins we beat third by. So we bowled really, really well, and having the opportunity to win that title was awesome. It's the first time I've been on TV in Indianapolis. So I had a lot of fun. I was really pumped up. I was actually a little more nervous than normal just because of being where I am and knowing how many friends and family that I have there. It does give you a little more nerves, but it's also a lot of fun being able to perform in front of everybody that you know.
Right, EJ. Yeah, you guys bowled so well on that doubles show. How painful was it for you to watch Marshall come up short, especially when he struggled somewhat on TV?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. Obviously, I want to win for my own personal things. Marshall is trying to get back in the winner's circle, and he's had, the stuff with his dad that's been going on for the last year or so. So I actually felt more more for Marshall than myself in that situation because I knew how big that moment would be if he was able to get that win.
Yeah.
And like I said, it broke my heart more for him than it did for myself. But it's one of those things. We'll be back there, and Marshall and I will be back as partners again, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more chances at winning that title.
Right.
Right, especially when he's so young still, like yourself. The future's still very bright for Marshall, and obviously we wish him the best and the best for the health of his father and as he's going through this time. And let's move on to the World Series and talk us through the meeting between the PBA and its players on coming to the decision to finish out the World Championships and then postponing the rest of the event and tour.
Yeah, it was basically the Fox wanted to get it on TV, and obviously the show had already been decided for that event, and the five of us everyone was still there, obviously, and it only made sense, I think, to go ahead and finish that event, but to not finish the animal pattern events. I mean, I think 99.9% of the players were in favor of postponing that because of some of the international players having to leave to get home to be able to get back in their countries. Mm-hmm. It would not have been fair to those guys to not have the opportunity to, make TV or win a title, especially those that haven't won or haven't been on TV yet, that had good weeks. So, we were, as players, we were 100% on board with not bowling those events. And I think the assumption is whenever the Masters gets rescheduled, I believe they're going to try to piggyback those events onto the Masters whenever that may be. So that way everyone doesn't have to make a special trip out to bowl just those pattern events.
Right.
And in my opinion, and I don't know what they're planning to do, but in my opinion, I think they should just move those events to Reno with the Masters instead of having to come back to Vegas. But that's just my opinion. Right. I don't know exactly what they're going to do. I would hope they would do that because it would make it a lot easier for people to travel coming in for the Masters, whether it was going to be before or after.
Right. The thing for you were like one of two or three players, I believe, to qualify for match play in all of three of the animal patterns. You were second and heading into match play for the cheetah, fourth in the chameleon, 14th in the scorpion. Knowing that was the right thing to do, how disappointing was it for you to see the World Series coming to a halt when you were bowling so well?
Yeah, it's never a good thing to see an event stop. When I feel like I kind of was peaking, I progressively was bowling better and better every single week. And I felt like I was peaking at the right time. The World Series is such an important week, or week and a half or whatever in our season. And I felt like I'd peaked at just the right time. So Yeah, it does suck, but for the betterment of the players and all the fans and all the staff and everyone to stay healthy, it is what it is, and we have to deal with it, and we just deal with it and move forward. And hopefully, whenever we are able to bowl those events again, I hope I'm ready. I'm back in the physical form that I was at that time.
Well, walk us through your match in the World Championships with Anthony and conversations you had with Brett on ball choice. Obviously, the outcome wasn't what you were wanting. What all went into that? Because you had bowled so well in qualifying, and you just kind of got off to a real bad start for you in that match.
Yeah, during the week, basically on all the patterns, whenever I saw my ball not hooking to the right, whenever there was a little bit of hang to the right, we just moved left. And on that particular show, I don't think there was enough games bowled and enough track defined for me to be able to do that for myself. And I should have stayed a little bit further right where I ended the game. After the commercial break, I came back, switched balls, moved right, and basically didn't miss after that. And that was definitely the right play. So it was just, the wrong educated guess. I based it off of what I had done the entire time I had been there. And sometimes you make those mistakes. I was just feeding off what I'd done the whole time instead of, I guess, what was actually happening on the lane.
Yeah, I know many are wondering how weird was it to bowl with no crowd for that show.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I've talked about it a couple of times when we were there. It's one of those things where when you maybe make a split or you throw a strike that the messenger comes across that's slow or something in a crucial moment. It's really nice in those moments to feed off of the crowd to get them energized. That kind of energizes yourself and kind of get the crowd on your side for that particular match, which is a huge mental thing that can help you through a match. But yeah, it was definitely different, and I'm really hoping it's something that we never have to do again, because it definitely took that element out of it. Even though we're up there and focused and bowling, I believe it makes it a little more fun with the crowd there, where you can kind of get them going and feed off of them as well.
How much does a player like Jason Belmonte drive or push you to be better?
Well, he's the reason that makes me want to get better. Every single week we show up, obviously, you think that he's going to have an opportunity to at least make the show, and he's proven that especially over the last year and a half, 2 years. It's hard to think back and look at a show and be like, was Jason on that show or not? Most of the time, the answer is yes. So,
Right.
he has a lot of opportunities to win titles, and he's the guy that we want to beat every single week. He's got that little bit of that Tiger aura, that Tiger effect around him, especially over the last couple of years. He's definitely the guy to watch for every single week, and every time he shows up, you think that he has an opportunity to win that week. No matter what we're bowling on, no matter what bowling center we're at, whatever the lane surface is, you think Jason's got an opportunity because he's here. And it's kind of the same thing, like I said, with Tiger. In his prime, whenever he showed up, people were like, "Well, we're playing for second this week."
Right. Right. Obviously Fox, has been a huge part of what I feel like taking the tour to another level. Are you guys frequently involved in conversations on not only marketing the tour itself, but maybe yourself as an individual player?
No, I haven't had any conversations like that with any uppers, even in the PBA. I think as far as individual marketing goes, we take it upon ourselves with social media and doing clinics and all kinds of stuff like that. But I would agree that Fox has done an absolutely fantastic job over the last 15, 17 months, whatever it's been. When we bowled the first time they had was the Clash in 2018. They've done a wonderful job, and I really really think that with them on board, with Flow Bowling on board, Bolero buying the PBA Tour, I think over the last I don't know 20 years, I feel like it's the best opportunity bowling's ever had. And I'm really excited to be a part of it and to see where bowling can go. And I think it can grow and thrive and be very, very popular again, like it was 30, 40 years ago. So it's really great to see that. And one thing I've noticed after being with Fox is being in public places, not around where I live, in a restaurant or in the airport or whatever. Actually, when I was in Vegas, I went to the car wash and I was coming in and I was at the thing buying my car wash, and the kid comes running out and is like, I think I've seen you on YouTube. So
Right.
I definitely notice stuff like that happening more and more often now that we've been with Fox, and that's just because we're more live TV events, and Fox replays shows over and over and over again, which is awesome for getting people to really know the players and know their names. They're not just seeing them once; they'll see them 3 or 4 times throughout the week,
Right.
with reruns on TV. So they really get to recognize us, and we're more recognizable, I guess I should say, with them being able to see us more often.
All right, we're with EJ Tackett, future Hall of Famer with the PBA Tour, and now that the tour's on hiatus, I know you had mentioned a little bit doing some honeydew lists. What else is EJ killing his time with?
Xbox.
All right, what game?
Well, I actually only have 2 games on my Xbox,
Okay.
and I have the PBA bowling game,
All right.
and I have the Golf Club 2019 PGA Tour.
Okay.
So obviously a golf game, I gotta have that as well with the bowling game. So that's all that I play. I get online. The other night I got on with I play with on the golf game. I played with Rhino and Marshall and one of Rhino's buddies. So we get on and play online and do all that sort of thing, hang out.
Have you shot 300 on the bowling game yet?
Oh no, I'm way worse on that game than I am in real life.
What's your rev rate on that game?
Definitely lower.
I know that. Now, are you kind of like some others? Or are you waiting for the weather to get a little bit nicer, where you can get out there and maybe play 18 a few times?
I've actually played twice so far. So the weather's been nice enough a couple of times to go out and play. I played on Friday, and I played I think the week before on maybe Thursday or Friday. And I've played at the course I grew up at. It's a short little course. It's like 6,100 yards, but I shot 65 and 70. So golf swing seems to be okay so far, but I need to get out and maybe play a little bit tougher course to see how good it really is.
You just ticked off a lot of guys with those scores there, Jay. Now, let me ask you this. We're hearing about some of the guys going on Twitch and playing the PBA game with, people that are on the internet or whatever. Have you talked about trying to set something like that up?
No, I'm not like a huge gamer, and I think with the Twitch, I think you have to do it on a PC, I think, or some sort of computer. I don't know how it works. I'm young, but I don't know how the internet works that well.
Hey, I'm with you, but I'm old.
So, no, if I did anything like that, I would probably just maybe go like live on Instagram or something like that if I did anything like that. But I've never really been into that sort of thing. I just kind of go relax and do it. And plus, I normally do it at like 1 in the morning, so
Yeah. Well, try having there'll be a day. Try having a 11-year-old that wants you to play like NBA 2K or Madden, and I don't even know all these buttons, and I just quit. So I get handled by everyone on these things. But I haven't tried the PBA game. I might have to try that.
It's fun.
Yeah, I haven't
Yeah,
done that one
it
yet.
is fun.
How can people keep up with EJ? Share some of your social media tags and so forth that guys can follow, fans can follow you during your career and season.
Well, I'm on basically everything: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I have a fan page on Facebook to follow, just EJ Tackett fan page, and then Twitter and Instagram is EJT300 on both of them. So if you search that on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me.
All right, before we wrap things up, another part of my favorite parts of the show here, we're going to do 12 frames with EJ. I'm going to ask you 12 quick questions, and you give me the first answer that comes to the top of your mind. Are you ready, Mr. Tackett?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
Do you prefer cereal at night or in the morning?
Both.
Both. What's your favorite food?
Steak.
Favorite ice cream?
Vanilla bean.
Do you prefer a good horror movie or a comedy movie?
Comedy.
Twitter or Instagram?
Instagram.
What show are you currently binge watching?
We just finished Ozark.
All right, who's the boss in the Tackett household?
Definitely not me.
What's your favorite ball of all time?
Ball of all time. Wow. All right, well, I have to give two answers.
All right.
So, if I had to say all time, probably Venom Shock.
Okay.
But before Motive.
All right, we'll give you this.
Probably the Pink Hammer.
Okay. All right. You have to be politically correct on the first one. I get that. You can have dinner with 3 famous people. Who are you inviting?
Tiger Woods. I really haven't thought of much past that.
You're gonna 3 tigers and an EJ? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Ronnie Russell isn't one of them. Are you kidding me?
Well, you got to be famous. Right?
Oh yeah. Biggest fear?
Biggest fear.
Probably for you, it's a 10-pin.
No, no, I can live through that. Honestly, probably because I do drive so much. Just becoming in an accident while driving is probably one of my biggest fears.
Wasn't that one of those movies, where somebody would like foresee an accident and they would like try to change the course of time? I can't remember. There was they had 5 horror movies about those, but one of them was a car accident. I remember that. Not sure why I went off on that tangent. Anyway, but if you could go to any concert, who are you seeing?
Any concert.
Any concert.
Probably. I haven't seen Garth Brooks.
All right.
So probably Garth Brooks.
These are supposed to be quick, EJ. I know I'm putting you under pressure. If you had an iPod and I turned it on, what song would have the most plays?
Right now, probably Loud and Heavy by Cody Jinks.
All right, there you go. That's 12 frames with EJ Tackett. See, not bad at all, right?
No, it was fun.
All right, thanks for playing. One of the nicest guys you'll find on tour, and definitely one of the most talented. EJ, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, EJ.
All right, take care.
See
All right,
ya.
EJ Tackett there, folks, and one of the nicest guys on tour. EJ always has time out of his day to make for you, and man, is he talented or what?
Yeah. Most people don't realize how good he actually is until you see him bowl in person. And it's pretty amazing to watch him bowl. And then the rev rate that he generates for being such a little guy.
Yeah, and I've slowed down his release. I don't know how many times when I watched him on tour on television. And I'm trying to figure out, how does he generate? It is so quick at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And, one thing that EJ is very similar to Pete Weber. And Pete Weber in his young days was a high rev rate player compared to his competitors. Open hand at the release. And EJ's
being soft
is open hand and very limber too, right?
Yeah. And EJ said one time that he does it all with his legs.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't see it. But
yeah. Those days for me are long gone. I'm not limber, and I used to be able to. Back in my young days, I could release the ball, and you'd never hear it hit the lane. Well, that's because you're getting down at the foul line. Well, not
you
the
get
case
older,
for
you
me.
can't do that. No.
Yeah, now you hear boom, at the lane. So, but it's always great to catch up with EJ, and there was one guy right there that knew what the right thing to do was, but man, he had to be thinking, gosh, I'm right there in every event. Because as you know, Chad, great bowling is great timing as well.
It is. And for him to say that, he's 7 or 8 years in and now he's hitting his peak, that's crazy for what all he's done so far in his career.
Right, and to be 27, 28 years of age, already be Hall of Fame eligible,
right?
Top 50 all time already in money earnings.
And he's
that's
not done.
amazing. Yeah, and so obviously, think of what EJ could be at, but Belmonte has been in his way several times, right?
So many times.
Right. Our next guest, I believe, bowled collegiately at Lindenwood and is the brother of Andy Dole. And I looked on some of his stats, Chad, and he's got a high average of 253. I don't know where he bowled that at, but obviously they were difficult that year.
Yeah.
A high series of 869, but he's currently the consumer product specialist with Brunswick, and a guy that I've known for a long time and consider a really good friend. Mike Dole, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Well, Mike, now that a big part of your life and now professional career is involved around the sport of bowling, what are you doing now that we're not doing anything bowling related?
Basically right now we're just still, as my role as a product specialist dealing with pro shops, I'm just, reaching out to them, making sure everything's okay, kind of talking through some strategy for when pro shops and bowling centers open back up, and just kind of let them know that, Brunswick's still thinking about them, and we're all hoping for the best when all this stuff gets cleared up.
Obviously working with Brunswick, what's your current role that you are with Brunswick? What do you do on a daily basis?
So just as a product specialist, I basically have a territory that stretches anywhere from Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Texas, Oklahoma. And basically, we're just the first step for the pro shop guys to call when they have questions. We do a lot of like the rebates, the warranties, the promotions. We do visits to distributors, see what's going on there. And we're just basically their first connection to the company when they need something or if they need help in the shops.
What were you doing when you heard that Brunswick had just purchased Ebonite International?
I was actually in a boardroom meeting. We had gotten called into a meeting that we just thought was a normal sales meeting, and we walked down the hallway, and our CFO, Corey Dykstra, was in the meeting, and he's never in those meetings. And he sat the 5 product specialists down, and we had to put our cell phones and our smartwatches in a box. Wow. And then they all handed us these folders, and I was kind of freaking out. I'd never been part of that. And then once everybody got a folder, we opened it up, and it was the press release. And it was just the craziest, surreal moment ever because nobody knew it was coming.
What are your initial thoughts about it, or what were and what are, I guess?
Initial, it was 50-50 because I had so many friends working for Ebonite that obviously I felt bad for them because I didn't know what was happening there. But the initial was exciting. Just to combine all those brands, to have an emotional connection to some of those brands. Cause my first staff contract was with Columbia 300 and, I was a big Ebonite kid growing up. So to be able to throw those brands again. And, it was just a really cool feeling. And it was just, to be part of such a big moment in bowling was pretty cool.
Right. Now, what's it been like to have all 7 brands under one umbrella?
It's been absolutely crazy, just because of how quick it happened. Like I said, nobody knew, so we weren't prepared. It's not like we had a game plan or a playbook made ready to go. Once that press release went out at 6 p.m. Eastern on that Friday, my phone didn't stop going off for the next 4 days. I woke up Saturday morning with over 100 text messages and 15 voicemails and all that other kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah,
And
I apologize for that.
yeah, it was funny because a lot of people just didn't think it was true.
Right.
So I had a lot of those, is it true kind of thing, and then it spurs from there. But it's just been a really cool time with all the people that we've added from Ebonite International and the people we get to learn from. And like I said, this kind of thing, it was going to be a really exciting year. I mean, this whole period right now is kind of a buzzkill to what we had planned for the year. But once everything gets back to normal, then we'll get back on track.
With bowling basically shut down with the coronavirus, how has Brunswick been dealing with the current business climate?
I mean, as a business climate, we're basically at a standstill. We have 3 divisions basically. We have Capital, which is the bowling center side of it, like the construction and the lanes and stuff. There's Aftermarket, which is, the lane cleaners, the pins, stuff like that. And then it's the consumer side. And, we're basically at a standstill right now with, Asia opening slowly back up, and over here is basically shut down. So right now it's just trying to do the best we can for the company. So when everything gets back to normal, we come out on the right side of this.
Well, and R&D is such a big part of the bowling ball business. And typically a lot of companies have, product launches throughout the season, not much towards the end of what we would call the PBA season. But how has this affected R&D, or has it?
I think, those guys are still working. Obviously we have, it's usually a 6 to 8 month window for creation of a bowling ball. So those guys are still working. Obviously their timelines have changed from when bowling balls are going to be released, because as an industry, we should push that back, just because we need to get these pro shop guys back on their feet, not expect them to buy stuff as soon as everything opens back up. But the plant's still running, which is good for us, because we'll get caught up on some stuff that, maybe some future releases or stuff that we were about ready to announce when all this happened.
Right.
So the plant's still running. The R&D guys are still working. We're not at full mass of employees, but, we're still working. And, it's just one of those things that I think, as crazy as the purchase of Ebonite was, we were a little worried that we weren't going to be able to make as many bowling balls, because we basically doubled our production. And with a little bit of this, I feel like we could get caught up a little bit.
Right.
So hopefully I'm right.
Well, and how fortunate do you feel like that you just wrapped up all of your seminars here, really basically at the beginning of March, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I flew home from Dallas like the Thursday before it really hit the fan, and we were worried that I was with Brad Bridges in Dallas, and we didn't know if we were going to make it out because they'd started to cancel flights, and I walked into Love Field at 6 a.m. on Friday morning, and I'd never seen it that empty. There's canceled flights everywhere. It was just a really weird feeling, and I was really happy to be home. The week before I was driving around, so I wasn't really stuck anywhere, but being in Dallas and how far a drive that is from Michigan, that would have been crazy to get home from there. So just thankful that we got it done with and wrapped it up before everything went sideways.
Right. And they just announced that Bowl Expo is canceled. Give me your thoughts on that. How's that going to affect you guys?
Bowl Expo, it's interesting because the bowling ball side of it is a very small percentage of Bowl Expo. It's it's a lot of the proprietor stuff, and it's more on that side of it. I think it's just going to make us have to ramp up our trade. We have normally a trade show season right after that. And there's just going to be a lot more. I think there's going to be a lot more consumers and customers that make it to the trade shows than they did before, because Bowl Expo wasn't there. Like I said, it was one of those things that we had kind of talked about when everything started to get canceled, whether it was going to happen or not. And, with a lot of these centers and pro shops not making any money, they're not going to be able to afford to really buy anything. So we kind of want to give them a little more time to recoup and get back on their feet.
Right. And, you're a highly competitive player in your own right, and recently had to postpone your USBC trip. How do you handle this situation as a person that's been around bowling and has bowled his whole life?
It was frustrating because we had a really good group of 10 guys that we both bowled really well last year, and we were pretty excited to be out there. Cameron Doyle and Greg Young had been on tour for the last however many months, so they were pretty sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And we were ready to go, and the Masters was out there, so I was gonna bowl the Masters, so I felt like going it after we were bowling USBCs right after the Masters was completed, so I felt like I was gonna be as sharp as I was going to be as soon as the Masters wrapped up and get ready for USBCs, and then it gets canceled, and then we're supposed to bowl the second week of March or the third week of March, and then now it doesn't start till the end of May. If it gets pushed back again, you're starting to see June 1st dates and stuff like that for the stay-at-home order lifted. I just don't know if they're going to be able to have the tournament or not, because it's just getting closer to league season and people just have already used their vacation or are going to save it.
Yeah, I mean, if you put yourself in Chad Murphy's shoes, I mean, how do you think they need to proceed with the USBC Open?
I mean, I feel like you're already going to. I almost feel like, you can't call it a wash because obviously I know how important the USBC Open is, but, you're already going to lose. I mean, I can't even tell you how many teams. Reno is still expensive to get to with all the flights being cheap. Reno is still expensive to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially like right now, most of my connecting flights are out of Midway. And Midway got hit with, the corona in the booth or wherever it got hit with. So a lot of those flights has been shut down.
Right.
So it's one of those things that I've talked to our group, and we're waiting to see if the tournament even gets started before we even try and rebook. Because we had a couple guys that work for Kegel that start doing camps around the end of July,
Mm-hmm.
and we have trade show season, so there goes end of July. It's just frustrating, but you have to do what's right.
Right.
And how sharp you're going to be when you don't get to touch a ball for 2.5 months, 3 months. You're not going to want to go right away.
Well, I don't know if you're watching our live stream, but behind us is some of our products, and I say ours, and I mean the brands of Brunswick. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, I carried these down from my upstairs closet by the front door down to here, and that's the first time I've touched a bowling ball in like 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, nope, I'm with you. I moved some bowling balls around so I could go get a bunch of groceries, and I haven't, I hadn't touched anything, and everybody's talking about how much, thumb tape they're gonna have to put in their thumb hole when everything gets back to normal, because nobody's gonna bowl for, unless you're one of the lucky ones. I mean, that either own a center or can get into one. I mean, nobody's gonna touch a ball for 2 months. I mean, it's gonna want to be hard to go bowl in some of the hardest conditions we bowl in all year at USBC, especially of late, and not touch the ball for a while.
Well, and guys, as you know, Mike, they invest their whole season into the USBC Open. Guys. Yeah. I mean, they practice and spend a lot of time and, like you're saying, resources and to make a run at that, because they put that at the pinnacle of their profession.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most, for a lot of amateur guys like myself, that's the most important 9 games of the year.
Right.
I mean, the guys that bowl tour, that's what they do for a living. And, a few of those guys don't even bowl USBCs, which is fine. It's just a different environment for them. But for the guys like us that are amateur players, like, winning an eagle is a big deal. Like, I always make the joke that if I ever got an eagle, then that'd be it. I'd retire. I'd be done. I'm going to go out on top.
Right.
It's just one of those things that, as an amateur player, the Eagles are because we're not going to get it, never going to have a PBA title unless we get our card. So the Eagles are our PBA titles. And, you prepare for that. So when you either get canceled or you don't know when you're going to be able to bowl, it's kind of frustrating.
Right. One of our viewers, Mike, wants to know, Dan, he wants to know who's the better bowler, Mike or Andy?
Andy was he's one of the most physically gifted bowlers I've ever seen. I mean, just raw talent. It would have been cool to see what he would have done bowling a little more. But he's got a family with 2 great kids and a great wife, and he just doesn't want to bowl as much. He's busy with the kids and doing middle school bowling and all this other stuff for school. And I took it more as soon as I got out of school. I took it a little more serious and obviously got into the industry. And You know, it would have been fun to see what he could have done if you hadn't seen Andy throw it. It's pretty funny. It's pretty fun to watch.
Right. Well, and I always give him a hard time, Mike, that I think he won the Ebonite Lafayette Open in the early 2000s and never bowled again. I mean, that's hard.
Right.
To,
Right.
don't you think as let me ask you this: as a bowler bowling competitively, do you find yourself when you've had success at one event? You kind of make a check mark that I'm going back there every year, or is it basically whatever your schedule will allow you to do?
No, I mean, usually you want to put like those events you always put on your calendar. I mean, and it just all depends on how it works out. I mean, there's always 4 or 5 tournaments on my calendar that I 100% will make it to, as long as work doesn't get, obviously the guaranteed paycheck comes first, but as an amateur player, you always put those events. We have a big Memorial Day tournament up here in Grand Rapids, holiday doubles for me in St. Louis. I always go and bowl and support the Lucy doubles in Houston. I mean, there's just events like that when you bowl good. I've bowled well both times. I've gotten it down to bowl the Lafayette Open, and when it doesn't work out that I can't bowl it, it's frustrating.
Right, absolutely. Semifinals not too long ago for you, right? Yeah, I have.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a question for you. I was doing some research on you. I know this is going to be scary.
Okay. Oh boy.
But I have to know, in 2003 at AMF West Allis, you go 300, 154, 155. What happened?
Yep. So if you're not familiar with AMF West Allis, it was a split house with like the bar and everything in the middle, and the one bay of lanes was always like the tricky ones. And I, however my rotation worked out, it was like later in the tournament, so you were bouncing back and forth, and I went from one side and bowled bad, and then went to the high side and shot 300, and then went back to the other side and bowled bad. So it was like a 300 to get back into it, like get my pins back, and then I gave them right back. So
right. I just had to ask. There's not too many things I can pick on you about, because when I'm going through the list of 800s and 300s,
I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, I mean, I was scrolling. I'm like, well, how many? This is taking forever, and then I thought I got to find one thing, and then I found that. But hey, I'm gonna get. Go ahead.
No, like I said, that's just one of those ones. Those are those stories that you're proud of, that you talk about. You don't talk about all the 300s and 800s, but you talk about the one where he shot 300 and didn't shoot 600 or whatever it ended up being.
Well, I'm going to get to my favorite part of the interview of our show, and that is 12 frames with Mike Dole. I'm going to ask you 12 quick questions, and you give me the first answer that comes to the top of your mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Do you prefer horror movie or comedy movie?
Comedy.
A good steak or a great hamburger?
A great hamburger.
All right. Favorite cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Ice cream. Favorite ice cream?
Cookie dough.
What show are you currently binge watching?
I'm currently Billions.
Because you binge watch a lot of shows, I know.
I do. I've been binge watching a lot lately.
Life is on the line, and you need one strike. Who you got?
Tommy Jones.
Favorite ball of all time?
Outburst. Columbia 300.
Best color in a bowling ball?
Black, because they all roll good.
Mm-hmm.
If I stole your iPod, what song would have the most plays?
Right now or ever?
Well, right now.
Probably it'd have to be something Luke Combs. I don't know what it would be, but it would be something Luke Combs.
You switched to country.
I did.
Wow. Mikey.
Getting old.
Yeah. Hey, I know. I know how that is.
I don't like this new rap stuff. I would go back 90s, but this new rap stuff is not for me.
All right. What's your biggest fear?
Failure. Like, I just always want to succeed and always do whatever I can to the max possibility. So.
All right. You get dinner with 3 famous people. Who are they?
LeBron James. You probably knew that one was coming.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington. And I don't know. It would have to be somebody funny. Adam Sandler.
All right.
Just somebody that would just be hilarious.
Well, that beats EJ's. His was Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods. He couldn't think of anybody else. I'm like, really? All right.
Yeah.
If we made a movie about your life, who would star as Mike Dole?
Oh God. I have no idea.
You know,
That's a good question. Poor soul. Anybody would look better. Whoever played, I want him to look better than what I do in real life.
Well, you don't have a favorite actor that you thought, hey, he could do a good job on me.
No, that's a. I wasn't prepared. I was listening, and I was like, all right, I'm prepared to answer these 12 questions, and then you stumped me.
That's what I'm going to say. It's 12 quick questions, Mike. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you stumped me. I don't know.
Probably Matthew
as long as it's
McConaughey,
somebody
right?
funny. What's that?
Probably Matthew McConaughey, right? You guys are both
Hey,
good
that's
looking,
fine.
right?
That works for me.
All right, that's 12 frames with Mike Dole. Mike is our consumer product specialist with the Brands of Brunswick. Mike, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate your insight.
Thanks, gentlemen. Stay safe out there.
All right, you too. Thanks,
We'll
Mike.
talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, that's Mike Dole with Consumer Product Specialist with Brunswick. I've known Mike since he was a young kid, and obviously I bowled college with Andy, and as you did at Purdue. And but Mike's one of the really nice guys you'll find.
Yeah, and you know it's funny because back in the day when we knew Andy, everybody always talked about his brother, not Andy, about how good his brother was, and we're like, no, there's no way he's better than, So 'cause some people say he's better than Andy, so.
Well, Mike's pretty darn good.
Yeah, then to finally see him bowl, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, and Mike extremely talented and but really one of the nice guys, and obviously, myself being on staff with Ebonite, it's great to be able to work with Mike. He's the guy that I relate with all the time, and so it's kind of nice. I've known him for a long time, and again, it's interesting to see what he has to say about how our current situation delays things for Brunswick, because they're probably thinking, yeah, it's great that this isn't in the full swing of the season, that late November, early December, because that's when a lot of product releases are coming out.
That's right.
And if this was in the, we're not bowling in when they have 7 to 14 releases because they have 7 brands, it could be very impactful, not only financially, but,
right.
You want to get the balls in your players' hands. So, we appreciate you again watching here on Savage Bowling TV, our first episode of Basement Interviews here. It's been a great show so far, and it's interesting to see not only how those that are in a kind of a, how do you want to say it, not necessarily a bowling role like EJ and Mark Sullivan, but you have Scott and Brian, how they're looking at from the business side.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in different ways being impacted by, COVID-19, and it's going to be interesting on long term how it's going to affect the bowling industry. Hopefully, everybody, we can recover from this pretty quick.
Yeah, and those are situations where bowling should rebound.
Right.
Now, like Scott was saying, they feel a little bit more on the fortunate side that this is going through a time in which bowling isn't as popular because warm weather's approaching.
Yeah.
Now, if this would have been, January, February, I mean, that would be devastating financially for a bowling center.
Right, because you're just you have your leagues, but to lose that open bowling, that's not something you're ever going to get back. Now your leagues might continue to bowl. You still have that revenue, but you're not going to get that open bowling back that you would have had during that time frame.
Yeah, and and that's the difficult thing is, obviously bowling is a sport to where it's just as much social as it is competing.
That's
especially league bowling. It's you're hanging out with the same guys every week. You're catching up with what's going on in that person's life or your teammates' lives, and then you're also trying to compete a little bit too as well. But you've kind of eliminated any part of being socially and competitively here at this time.
That's right. Mike was talking about, you guys were talking about, moving the bowling balls. I was just thinking the other day, I was like, man, I just almost want to put my hand in my bowling ball to see what it feels like. Because it's been, 3 weeks since we've bowled. So.
Well, and the frustrating thing for us, as we bowled together on Wednesdays, we haven't been able to. We were bowling so well. We were right around first or second, and when you're bowling well, it's just like EJ said. You're bowling well. You want to keep going, right? Especially for him, because when you're doing that for a living, you want to make sure that you can make all the money you can. So
yeah, we had a ton of momentum going on in our league, and really felt that was important for us to finish strong, because there's a lot of, I think we were talking top three teams were separated by just a few points.
Yeah.
On a 32-point system.
Right. 32 points each week. That can add up quite a bit. So, again, we're waiting arrival of our next guest, and we appreciate you taking time to watch the first episode of Basement Interviews. We hope you enjoyed watching so far. We appreciate everyone reaching out here on our chat page. If you have any questions for some of our upcoming guests, we're hoping to get with Brad Miller here in a few minutes, and then we'll wrap our show up here with Mike Aulby, Scott Gilmore, and Chad Lester here live from my basement. I mean, that's where we're at. We're downstairs in my basement. I'm lucky that my kids upstairs are being good and quiet, and actually don't have any idea what the weather's like because I have no windows down here. So anyway, but we appreciate your time for chatting with us, and if you have any questions for us, or maybe for Brad Miller or Mike Aulby coming up, shoot us a message here on our chat room. We appreciate all of those that have taken a little bit of time to join us here on Sunday afternoon. And I know, as we talked about earlier, really I'm not watching any television, so
no.
We appreciate those that are probably feeling like they're having nothing to watch as well, if you're a sports fan right now.
Right. If you have any questions for us in the chat room, ask now. We'll try to answer them. And TV's gotten really boring. I know the first few days I was kind of like, I can watch some shows, but there's no sports on. Same thing every day. Then it's, what can you find on Netflix or Amazon Prime or, to binge. We've binged a few things, but even that gets boring.
Yeah.
Just watching TV.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where you aren't sure what to watch, because you can only watch classic episodes of college basketball or the NBA so long. So it's one of those things where you're waiting to find something good to watch. And really, I didn't get a chance to ask EJ, but going back to the World Championship, I was really surprised that the ratings weren't higher for that, because it was really the only live sporting event on at that particular time.
And I was surprised too, because I saw a few people on Twitter, and I don't know who they are, but they stumbled upon bowling, and they're like, "This is awesome," So I think we got our call.
Yeah, here we go. For the 2020 PBA season, this guy is currently in the top 15 in earnings, points, and average 6th in cashes. He made his first single show in Oklahoma and is part owner of his own brand. Let's welcome Brad Miller to the show. Brad, thanks for taking the time this afternoon to join us.
Hey, Scott. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're doing great. I know we're in weird times here in the world, and I know for you especially, as the 2020 season, had been a breakout year for you. How disappointing for you right now is it to see the season being suspended?
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, throughout the entire year, I really don't feel like I spend a whole lot of time at home. So actually being able to spend just some relaxing time, catching up on some sleep, I can be productive and do a lot of things with like video and emails and just running the business. It's a lot easier to do that stuff. So there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. I feel like I'm really rested now and I'm healthy and stuff like that. But as far as bowling not being able to bowl, it definitely sucks, because you're right. I did have a lot of momentum, and I felt like everything was really kind of going my way. We were getting ready to have the Masters. We were getting ready to finish the animal pattern tournaments, where I made 2 match plays, and then we had the playoffs in the PBA league, and we had all these like amazing things getting ready to happen, and then they all just come to a halt. But we're not the only people that are affected. I mean, imagine being a senior in college bowling,
Right.
where imagine the person who is the first in college bowling this year, and he doesn't get to finish out the season, or the best team in college didn't get to finish out the season. So everyone's affected.
Yeah, how we looking back, we talked with you last in person at Indianapolis during the Indianapolis Open, and obviously the Mark Roth and Marshall Holman doubles. And the sentiment from most of the players were like, "Man, this is, we're tired, we're sore, we're beat up." How much would you give to go back to that element to be able to compete, right?
Yeah, I know Indianapolis was crazy, but when was Indianapolis? Oh, that was just like 6 days before the World Series. Yeah, those like 5 days we had in between the Indianapolis and the World Series were amazing. I felt really rested at the World Series. But, I did feel a little bit fatigued at the World Series too, I guess. It was a lot. I don't know if it was because I was making more match plays than I normally make or what, but by the time we got, when we finished the U.S. Open, that was 56 games, and then we had an 11-hour drive, and then we had practice session the next day in Indianapolis. I've never felt that tired in my life. Like, I couldn't look at the pins anymore. I couldn't think. It's like every day you wake up and say, okay, I have to bowl 14 more games today. Like, oh my gosh. And it's not something that you can just go through the motions. Like, going through the motions of bowling isn't very hard. It's trying to keep up with all the stuff that's going on, all the ball changes, all the conversations with the ball reps, all the emotional swings you experience, like just all of that stuff is the draining part. If you get lazy, if you get caught slipping and you hit a bad pair and shoot 160, you're dropping 20 spots. So you can't slip.
Right.
There's no room for error. And so living on that kind of idea that each game has to be great, because it doesn't necessarily have to, but it's got to be pretty close. I mean, you can't be shooting 190s, and you got to be shooting 230s and 240s, which means you're only missing 3 times a game, and each pair is playing different, and you got to switch balls 4 times a block, and it's always changing, so you always got to be on your toes. That feeling definitely wears on you. I'd love to go back to it, though. I mean, we were really rolling. PBA was gaining so much momentum. I was excited to see how, because 2 years ago when we were on ESPN, the PBA got 11 million views. Last year got 20 million views. And I was really excited to see how many views we could pull this year with everyone getting better. Everyone's social media is getting bigger. I was really excited to see how this year turned out. But, yep, came to a halt.
Well, you mentioned a little bit about your success in the World Series of Bowling. I mean, you were so consistent. Except for one event, the Cheetah Championships. I mean, you were 15th in the Chameleon heading into match play, 5th in the Scorpion, and you were 9th for the World Championships. We often hear bowlers talk about a learning curve on tour. Do you feel like you figured that out?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have figured some stuff out. A lot of it has to do with just understanding how to play the lanes, and what ball you need to do so. So if you're looking at, when you first go out on tour, for example, when I first went out on tour, I was watching these guys play these huge angles. I was watching Stu Williams hook the entire lane. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. And so it was clear to me that I didn't know something. And just as you keep bowling, you start to figure things out. Oh, okay, so when I need to hook the entire lane, this is what I can do. And these are the types of balls that I like to throw. And when urethane's a big part of the game now, so figuring out what kind of urethanes you like and when you like to throw those, that's a big part of the game. And learning kind of how to release the ball when you want to go a little straighter and what balls you like to throw for that stuff. So, yeah, I definitely have figured it out. When I first went on tour, I was also with Motive as well. And I was just so new. I don't think I was good enough to throw their equipment, I guess. Or I don't know if it's that. Motive, you only had the Motive has great equipment, except the only part is Belmo has 2 bowling balls that are bowling ball companies that he can throw, and if you're on Motive, you only have 1. So, and you don't have a ton of bowling balls that you can throw. You only have like 4 or 5 or 6. And I just wasn't good enough to be able to understand what I needed to do with those bowling balls. And the transition to Storm opened me up to more options. It gave me actually physically more bowling balls to be able to throw. And that addition to my game has helped me as well. So, and then I've got, I feel like Storm, they put out the best ball reps out there. The ball reps do the best job. They work as a team. They do their homework. They understand oils and patterns and lane surfaces and bowling balls. And they really bring forth a lot of knowledge to the table for their staffers. And so that's a part of the reason as well. Storm, they really do a good job of making sure their ball rep team is qualified and they're doing the best job possible, because it's such a big part of our success nowadays. I mean, Tim Mack, he's dang near making every decision for Belmo and Simo and Jesper. They don't really throw a shot without him seeing it or understanding what they need to do. So the ball reps are a big part too, and Storm does a great job of supplying us with those.
All right, we currently have on the phone Brad Miller, basically, YouTube sensation, and appreciate your time. Chad, go ahead.
Yeah, Brad, you're chairman of the PBA Players Committee, and talk to us about the decision to suspend the World Series and beyond at the conclusion of the World Championships.
Yeah, so Sean Rash called me one day. We were getting ready to bowl the match play of the World Championship, and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little scared." And I said, okay. So we have a little Facebook group with a lot of the players, and I messaged them and I said, hey, what do you guys think about this virus? Are you nervous to continue to bowl? Do you want to bowl the Masters? What are your guys' thoughts? That was the same day USBC were having the meetings, whether they were going to postpone the Masters and the Open Championships and all the college tournaments. And so I asked the players, and a lot of them said they're okay with finishing the World Series of Bowling, and the Masters should probably be canceled. That's what most of them said. So I screenshotted all the stuff and I sent it off to Chad. And I don't know if he read it. I don't even know if it helped him make a decision, but it aligned with the same decision that Chad made. So if anything, it just kind of solidified that I think they made the right decision. But yeah, and then we bowled the match play and we're talking about it, and people didn't think there were a couple. Belmo was like, let's just bowl. He had this really relaxed mindset behind it. But then the next day, it was an off day. It was our first off day that we had, and they told us all to go to the bowl, and we had a meeting. And they said they were going to they wanted our opinion, and they were going to suspend or postpone the animal pattern events. And then they didn't know what to do with the World Championship because there were only 5 guys left. They had a TV slot on Sunday where the Cheetah Championship was supposed to be. And so a lot of the players expressed concern of bowling the show, and the PBA basically said that this is a great opportunity for us to get a live sporting event on television when no other sporting events are on television. And Belmo and a couple of guys were like, yeah, let's bowl. And I know a couple of guys were a little more nervous, but they went ahead and ran the show, and they added a bunch of money to it. And I'm assuming they added money just because they wanted to make sure the players were rewarded for sticking around an extra day. It made it worth their time. And it ended up being a good decision, I think, because no one, as of now, has contracted the virus. And I think we're lucky because it seemed like a terrible place to be, Vegas. Whenever they shut down the NBA, we were walking around the casino and everyone was just, the casino's packed on that Friday night. And we were wondering, like, wow, these people really don't care. Like, this isn't a great place to be right now. And it turns out Vegas hasn't gotten hit like New York and LA and all these places.
Right.
So yeah, we're really lucky. The PBA, they kind of made a gamble for that show, and it turns out it paid off, I think.
Well, yeah, and it's just been a surreal time for the sport of bowling, that's for sure. But, I want to talk about you and your pal, Kyle Sherman, who have taken social media to a whole new level within the world of the PBA, and you guys are like household names. How did the idea of Brad and Kyle, the vlog, and the YouTube channel all come about?
Well, Kyle had graduated college. I had been kind of traveling around by myself, bowling regionals, just trying to get better. And I was kind of ready to give it up, to be honest. I was bored. I didn't want to make these drives by myself anymore. And Kyle was graduating college, and he wanted to go out there and bowl for a little bit. So I was like, yeah, let's just travel together. And then Flanagan, Mike Flanagan, a great friend of ours, he's like, you guys should vlog. And I'm telling her, like, what do you mean vlog? And he goes, look up these guys on YouTube, Casey Neistat and David Dope.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. And they basically just make videos for the internet. And so Kyle and I were like, okay, screw it. And so the first one we did was Jonesboro, Arkansas, and we were filming from our phone. And the quality was terrible. And then the next week we went to Lubbock, Texas, and we filmed from our phone again, and the quality was terrible. And it took us 15 hours to make the first video in Jonesboro, and I think it took us like 12 hours to make Lubbock. And Lubbock was a long drive, so we just made the video on the way home. But so we made a couple videos of us bowling, and they didn't get a whole lot of views. And so we just kept doing it. Like, I really found it fast. I really loved Casey Neistat's videos. Kyle really loved David Dobrik's videos. And I just thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. Like, these are very well planned out, very like, these guys are great videographers and editors and stuff like that. And I kind of found it fascinating. And I knew that if we could do the same thing that came to bowling, if we could become good editors, if we could make quality videos about the sport of bowling, then it could take off. And we always wondered what was the ceiling, right? I mean, we had a meeting with Chad Murphy once, and he was just asking us what we were up to and what our plans were, and if we could help them, if they could help us, type thing. And he mentioned there were only 1-point-something million league bowlers. So in order to get like 1 million subscribers, we were going to have almost every single league bowler in the USBC, which didn't seem possible. You know, there's no way we can get every league bowler to subscribe to our channel.
Mm-hmm.
So we were always worried what the ceiling was, and we still don't know. You know, we're still growing. And hopefully, but the one thing we've realized is there are people in our comments that are saying, what's plus or minus mean? What's this mean? So some people who are brand new to bowling are checking out our content.
That's good.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
That's a really good sign. We don't know how many of those there are, but we are attracting some. So, and honestly, like as everything else grows, as the PBA grows and everything, more people get introduced to the sport, then maybe the ceiling's pretty high. Maybe in 10 years we'll have 1 million subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But the idea came from Flanagan. He's the one who told us about this internet thing. And it's actually his dream. He wanted to be a vlogger. He wanted to walk around and make videos. And he's done some really cool projects with some videos that he's made. But without Flanagan, he taught us how to edit. He taught us how to do everything, how to start the YouTube channel. And eventually we got into instructional videos. I was looking on YouTube one time for bowling's top 20 videos or whatever, and like Dalmo's videos with Dude Perfect were on there, and there were just all the videos that have millions of views, and there were like 3 or 4 of them that were titled How to Hook a Bowling Ball. So I told Kyle, I said, hey, this is our first instructional video. We're going to name it How to Hook a Bowling Ball.
Right.
And to this day, it's our best video.
Yeah, got to
like
get those
2 million views
keywords.
now,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Our first instructional video ever. So, yeah, that's how it came about.
Right. Now, how do you think your YouTube channel and social media in general is changing the perception of the PBA?
Well, it always bothered me that people's perception of the PBA was just 1 hour a week, because there was so much more that happened. Like, there is more that happens on a daily basis in qualifying than on that television show.
Yep.
Like, there's more storylines, more things that happen, more people that shot 160 the last game of qualifying, more people that shot 270 the last game of qualifying, more ball changes, more bad pairs. Like, there was so much more that happened on a daily basis than just that little 5-person step ladder. It didn't represent bowling at all. It didn't. It gave people. I mean, it is what it is. But in terms of really showing off your product and your company, 1 hour a week doesn't do anything. So, and in terms of like in all the other sports that showcase the golf, they got 4 days in a row. It's just 1 hour a week. Just that can't really do very well in terms of attracting sponsors and stuff. So Kyle and I felt we were in the perfect spot. Like, we understand every single player. We understand every single storyline. We're next to them. We're living with them. We can get other people to talk. And so our goal this whole time isn't necessarily just to broadcast him and I. I mean, it's nice to be in the forefront. It's nice to have fans, and it's nice to really see that side growing on a personal level. But really, we just want to show people what bowling is really all about on a daily basis. And it sells itself. It doesn't even have to be Kyle and I. Kyle and I mean, we're just the face of it, but really people love all the other stuff. They love the house now and all the members of the house, and they love to keep up with their scores, and they love to hear the left to right ratio, and they love to hear what bowling balls we threw, and they love to hear our arsenal, and they love to hear all these things that you don't see on a television show. So it really just sells itself. I mean, all Kyle and I have to do is talk a little bit about the day and what's going on, and people love to hear it. It gives them a reason to watch on Sunday because they felt they know exactly what those players went through to get to the television show. And that's the beauty. I mean, we spend 4 days of bowling just to get to that television show, which is a huge deal. It's a huge deal when you make a television show.
Yeah.
But people just see the television show. They don't see the journey up to it, when really the real beauty of it all is the journey up to it.
Right. And
go
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, how fascinating is it for you now that you see veteran players like the Chris Barnes and some of the guys that have been on tour for 10, 20 plus years? They like to be involved in your YouTube videos.
They love it. Like, it's when Kyle and I first started, people looked at us weird because we were holding a camera in our face, and we felt weird. Honestly, it was hard to do in public.
Right.
But if you're an entertainment, if the organization is for entertainment, these people need cameras in their faces, and players were a little shy around cameras. Like, they were, almost all of them, and it's because they weren't necessarily used to cameras in their faces. They were used to doing some interviews, and they were used to going on some shows. But in terms of, like, on a daily basis, cameras walking around, and you have to, like, and they're portraying the entire day. It took people a while to warm up to that. And then people started realizing how fun they were. Like, people would watch our videos, and they were positive, and they were funny, some of them. And they were gaining some traction, and we were gaining some fans, and people just kind of liked them. And so they started to warm up to him. And now Barnes, he has some funny stuff to say. And Belmo's amazing on camera. And everyone in the house, really, and Bill O'Neill's good for the camera, and they're all great for the camera. They just needed a camera.
Right.
They just needed a camera to talk to get comfortable with. And they also know that we're not going to do anything or put anything in a video that's going to, ruin their image. So if they say something stupid, or if they're fried and they say something they regret, we're just not going to put it in. It's that simple.
Right.
So it works really well. The players, they're great for camera. They just needed one.
Right. And there's so much young talent right now on tour. Who is a player that we may not know that's going to be the next star, in your opinion?
Besides Kyle Sherman, but we know who he is, right?
I'm trying to think of the younger generation. So, we got probably. Well, I say Packy's probably the newest one of our group because Tang's been out there a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Chris Vai's been out there a little while. Prather's been out there a little while. I'd probably say Packy.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it seems like such a great young kid too. I mean, you know, he's a lot of fun in your videos. We had a chance to chat with him a little bit at Indianapolis, and he's got such a great sense of humor too as well. Seems like he fits right in with your group.
He does, and he handles scenarios really well. Like when he has a bad day, he doesn't really let him get it down. He doesn't let it get him down.
Mm-hmm.
He really handles it pretty well. There was a game at the World Series, last game qualifying. He had a chance to make the cut, and he shoots like 170, and he's just like, he handled it so much better than I would have. So when you see things like that, you're like, oh, okay, he's primed for something like this. He has control of his emotions. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun traveling around with all those guys, and it's fun how Prather's kind of jumped into the group. He seems like he would be so conservative, but it's fun to see how he's kind of fit right into with your group as well.
Yeah, well, we have so many different personalities. You get a lot of comedy from Packy, and Mikey Tang's got a really fun sense of humor, and then Prather's on like the more analytical side. And so you just have such a well-rounded group of guys. It ended up being perfect. And Kyle and I knew this would happen. We knew the people we room with are going to be a part of the content. And even on our first videos, we were hanging out with Nick Pate and Nick Crummell, and we were rooming with Jake Peters a little bit. And we attempted to kind of get them in there. And we knew eventually we were going to get a lot more people involved. And that was honestly the goal. We wanted more faces. And it's like it turned out to be like the perfect scenario. Like we have every personality possible. All the really analytical people out there would love Chris Prather. All the really people who love to laugh would love Packy, and we just have everything. Like we've got it all, really. And it's great for the PBA because, but that's the way the PBA has always been. You've always had these great group of characters that really make you kind of fall in love. Problem is you only saw 5.
Right.
You only ever got to see 5,
Yep.
and a lot of them were the same 5 every week, each and every week. So it's really working out perfectly.
Well, we'll get you out of here on a couple of questions here. I wanted to ask how or what are you doing currently besides playing the PBA bowling game on Twitch? What are you doing to kill some time here?
I'm not doing anything. Dude, I haven't touched a ball. I don't really plan on touching a ball. I'm wondering how long I'm going to go without touching a ball. What's it been, 2 weeks now? I might go a month. Without touching a ball. I do have an opportunity. There are a couple bowling centers in the city that would allow me to go in. There's like a mechanic that goes in and works on some machines every once in a while. So he said I could come in and practice whenever I wanted. So I'll probably take them up on that at some point. I might wait a couple weeks, so I'm really enjoying just kind of hanging out. I bought a PS4 and a monitor, so I've been playing some Call of Duty and a couple other games with some friends. But the cool part is about video games is you're connected to your friends. You can play with your friends. Like that makes it. I really wasn't up to date on that whole scenario. I haven't played a video game in like 10 years.
Well, you don't have time.
But but yesterday I've been to meetings. I had a player committee meeting yesterday. I had a meeting with Cole Lee the day before. I had a meeting with a couple of guys to kind of learn some email marketing and some ideas that we could do with the house and turn that into its own business. Packy and I are working closely to try and get that up and running. So I'm feeling really productive, actually. I feel really on top of all the work that I have or can have. And I feel like I actually have some time because when we're bowling, I just don't have time. It's like, it's just so hard to ingest everything between bowling and making a video that running a business is like making sure the emails go out and making sure this happens and making sure we get this person's name. And just the whole thing just is really overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I'm just making sure that I got all the pieces in order, and I got everything down, and we're making sure we're, going in the direction we want, and we've actually got some time to make sure we do it right. So I'm just kind of focusing on the business and some player committee stuff and playing some video games, and that's about it.
All right, we'll get you out on this. My favorite part. You ready for 12 frames with Brad Miller?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you 12 quick questions, and you give me the first answer that comes to the top of mind. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, we all know you like ice cream. Favorite flavor?
Cookies and cream.
Cereal at night or in the morning?
Morning.
A good steak or a great hamburger?
Great hamburger.
What show are you currently binge watching?
Money Heist.
What's the biggest thing you're afraid of?
Death.
Life on the line and you need one strike. Who you got taking it?
Whoever.
You get dinner with 3 famous people. Who are you inviting?
Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Patrick Mahomes.
All right.
Nice.
Nice mix. There'd be some interesting conversation on that table, wouldn't it? If I were to look or take your iPod, if you had one, what song would have the most plays?
Wet Sand by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
All right. What's the best color in a bowling ball?
Blue.
You get one place to take an all-expense paid vacation. Where are you going?
Bali.
Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram.
If we were to make a movie about your life, who's starring as Brad Miller?
Someone who looks like me, right? So,
Doesn't necessarily have to look like you. You know.
doesn't have to look like me.
Yeah.
Oh God. Who's starring as Brad Miller?
I know it's.
Dude, I have no idea. I want to say Tommy Jones
There you go.
because we
Hey.
look similar.
You know,
A young Tommy Jones.
well, he's got a lot of acting ability in him. There's a lot of sarcasm in Tommy Jones.
I know.
I'm going to ask you a bonus frame. Who's better, Kyle Sherman or Brad Miller?
Me.
I knew that was going there. Well, hey, man, you just survived 12 frames. Brad, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, best of
Appreciate
luck whenever the season comes back. Brad, you're always one of our favorites. We enjoy talking to you, and we follow right along here. And before we let you go, how can they follow along in all the escapades of Brad and Kyle?
Well, we've got an Instagram, we've got a YouTube channel, obviously Brad and Kyle, and our individual. I use Twitter at Brad Miller 08. I'm getting ready to start using Twitch at Brad Miller 08. Kyle's got some social media pages as well, but we mostly are on YouTube and Instagram at Brad and Kyle.
Hey, one thing before we let you go, one of our viewers said, "Hey, Vin Diesel should star as Brad Miller."
I like that because he looks better than I do, so he'll give me a good image.
All right, Brad. Hey, stay safe, be healthy, and we hope to catch up with you soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank you.
Brad Miller, everyone. And again, always great to catch up with Brad. And I know our interview there ran a little bit longer, but a lot of
right.
great insight from someone that is multitasking on tour. He's bowling at a high level, and he's vlogging, and he's also a voice of the players.
Right. We saw him vlogging while he was bowling, and we wondered, how hard is that? Does it take away from the mental, part of bowling?
Yeah, he was behind one of the
Packy, I think.
Yeah, and he was taking a video of him and in competition, and so it was quite amazing, to see him do that and still bowl at a high level. You were right, Chad. I was wondering if that would affect his play, but obviously it hasn't, as he's done quite well here. for himself, and I'm sure he's one that probably cannot wait for the tour to get back up and running. So, but great to catch up with Brad. If you've never had a chance to talk with Brad, one of the nicest guys you'll find on tour.
Yes, he is.
So,
in fact, he came up to us when we first got to Indianapolis and said hi.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was always willing to sit down and take some time to call or to talk and sit down and chat. And again, we'll move on to our last caller of our show today. This guy really needs no introduction. Rookie of the Year on the PBA Tour in 1979. Don't want to age him. For 36 years was the youngest on tour to have won a major. He's 8th all-time in titles with 29, last coming in 2001. He was PBA Player of the Year in 1985 and 96. He's one of 2 players to win the Super Slam, all 5 majors. I believe he still won a record $298,237 in 1989, and I'm sure he'd like to have that money today equivalent in 2020. He's been elected into the PBA Hall of Fame in 1996, the USBC Hall of Fame in 2001, and ranked 6th on the all-time PBA's greatest list, and now he's currently president of the Bowling Museum and Hall of Fame. And someone, Chad, that we're so lucky to call a great friend and our color commentary on some of our events. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Scott and Chad, great to see you guys. Been watching for the last couple hours and had a great time, and thank you for what all you guys do. I mean, not just today, but what you do here for the state of Indiana and for bowling in general. But we greatly appreciate it. And just a couple of things after that opening. I mean, after you mentioned all that, it's a little too late about the age part, and all those figures were before taxes and expenses. So I'm good.
I don't know if do you know that what you won in '89 is equivalent to $617,000 today? And that, wouldn't you like to have some of that bowling money today?
I would sign up for that. Yes, I would sign up for that.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and joining us here for our first show of Basement Interviews. And you've been such a great friend and someone that a big part of our broadcast. But one thing we've noticed, you still have a pulse on the PBA Tour, and obviously you're an owner of Mike Aulby's Arrowhead Bowl, and with everything that's going on. With our current crisis with the coronavirus, how do you feel this will be, or difficult will be, on the bowling industry as a whole?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be it's something we obviously don't know because none of us have seen anything like this. So it's not 9/11, it's not the financial crisis. I mean, it's something we're not going to be able to read. But we need to be ready to adjust the way we do business, the way we reach people, the way we do everything. We've got to be ready for all those things because you really don't know, coming out of this and how quickly we come out of this to whether, parents are going to be comfortable letting their kids go to some of these entertainment facilities. You have to pick up your game in cleanliness, which is something that Scott Devers has always been high on at Arrowhead. Since we've been together, 22 years ago. So, but we just really don't know what that's going to look like, and you just have to be ready for anything and everything, no matter what business you're in.
Well, we wanted to kind of have more fun conversations with you, and I know
Sure.
Your time on tour, at the level that you've bowled, you've kind of experienced everything. And, really, since there's no bowling on TV, a lot of people are watching classic PBA shows on YouTube, and I wanted to talk to you about some more of your most memorable telecasts. Talk to us about one where you became the youngest to win a PBA major, the 1979 PBA National.
Yeah, I mean, if it's funny, if you look at the 11th tournament I bowled in 1979, 11th tournament I bowled in ever in the PBA, so other than some regional events before that. But it was the first stop on the summer tour. Back then, we bowled on the CBS Sports Spectacular, and it was the first stop of the summer in June. And I was there was 5 guys. You cut to the show for 5, but there was only going to be 2 matches shown on TV. So I qualified third. Actually, had to win my first match just to get onto TV. So it was just there's something to be said about being young and naive and not knowing the situation you're in. I mean, you get out there and sure, there's pressure, but like I said, you don't quite understand all what's going on, and the whole pressure of the situation. And my dad was there. The next day was Father's Day, so it was just, to be able to win my first title and beat Earl Anthony at the Showboat, and it's a major automatic 7 years into the Tournament of Champions. I mean, it just had so many things that day that. You basically, as a kid, I was 19 years old, lived for it, and to have it all come true that one day was just unbelievable.
Well, outside of that tournament, what were some of more of your more memorable victories that you held kind of on a different level?
Yeah, it used to be. I mean, people would ask me, what's your favorite tournament? Well, I'd have to almost, I put it in different categories. The one you just mentioned, the PBA National in '79. I mean, that was obviously a dream come true to be able to win. Another one would be the 300 game in Wichita in '93. It's a perfect game is just something I never thought would happen. There's obviously so few of those that are bowled on television. To think that you're going to be one of them is just not something you think about. But then to bowl David Ozio that day, who had the front 7 and shot 279, and I needed the first strike in the 10th just to win the darn tournament, at that point. And
Right.
So, but then able to put the next two together, and obviously it really makes you feel so good to be able to have done that, and it's a nice thing to have in your career. Plus, that day, Brunswick was offering $100,000 if you used a Brunswick ball and a Brunswick shirt. So that was a bonus that most people didn't know, because on TV they only knew about the $10,000 that the PBA offered. So it was really great. And one story that to that tournament especially was when I made a TV show, I didn't. I always had the ball that I used most of the week, and then I would always drill another bowling ball on each side of that as far as it hooks. If one would hook less, and I'd drill one that would hook more. So I was prepared for whatever happened on television the next day, because with the lights, they do funny things to the oil patterns, and you just got to be ready. And I really didn't like my look. So when I came over for my 4 shots, 2 shots on each lane before the tournament, for my match, the title match, I pulled out a ball I hadn't thrown yet, and I threw 2 strikes on the left lane, 2 strikes on the right lane, and then 12 for 300, and that ball has never seen a lane since. So it retired after 16 shots.
And what ball was that?
It was a Rhino LE.
I remember that ball.
Yeah, it was a dark blue ball. It was, but yeah, phenomenal day. One of those things. So that, and then of course the other tournament for me would be the Tournament of Champions, to complete the Triple Crown. And my father passed away the year before, and it was a stadium setting, and it just had the double in the 10th to do it, and just one of those very fortunate situations to give yourself an opportunity, and something I looked for a long time. I had a lot of good tournaments at the Tournament of Champions, but I'd never quite been able to finish it off, and so that was a great one.
Yeah, we're just watching highlights right now of your 300 game against
with
David
Ozio,
Ozio. And now let me ask you this.
A little younger there, see.
Yeah, can you get down on the knees like that and then hop right back up? Are you able to do that?
I can get down on the knees. I don't know if I'm going to hop right back up. I might need a little assistance, but, I'll be fine.
Right. One question I always wanted to ask you, there aren't any true rivals in the sport of bowling, but there are guys that you knew you had to beat or wanted to beat. Who were those guys for you back in your playing days?
Let me see how many listeners are listening here. Okay. It's one of those things where, I never really looked at it that way. I mean, I always had to try to find an edge to make sure that I really was my own worst enemy. So I had to find a way to get myself up mentally to bowl against whoever I was bowling. Didn't really matter who it was. My most difficult matches through the years was my brother-in-law, Steve Cook. Only because we were such close friends and family, and we knew each other's lives. We both doubles together, so it was always hard to, go that extra step or dot the I and cross the T's to do the mental things you need to do to win. And he was always my toughest one. I mean, on tour, let's face it, they didn't get there because they got handed it to them. They got there because they were darn good at it. So everybody was a challenge for sure.
One thing that we talked about, I think, in one of our broadcasts, but I don't think we were on the air, but how do you feel social media would have been perceived back in your day on tour?
It would have been, for me, I'm not so sure. I mean, watching some of the guys, just listening to Brad, right before Brad Miller. I mean, phenomenal what they're doing and able to do. And like you said, you saw him even. I think Chad might have mentioned you saw him, blogging while he was bowling. I was doing the same thing in Indy, watching guys, on the phone and doing things. It's like, man, it was all I could do to keep my head at the next shot I was throwing. I'm not sure I could have been divided that many different directions. But, I guess if you grow up into it, but it definitely adds a different insight to what the tour is like and what they're doing, and hooray for all they're doing. I mean, that's awesome because, it used to be the TV show, like you said, was an hour and a half of a glimpse of the tour, but there's so much more to it that people never really got to see until now. So I think it's great. I mean, my daughter's now head of our social media at Arrowhead, and she's working on Instagram. We got 85 followers. We're trying to get to 100, so we're going to do a question and answer with me. And what I'd like to do as well is do some stuff with the things I've collected through the years and different things, and try to be a little more involved in the social media. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And now that I don't bowl anymore, I mean, it becomes something that I truly enjoy to talk about and see. And the bowling industry is just so much more than what the outsider sees. That's for sure.
All right, we're with Hall of Fame, PB Hall of Famer, and one of our great friends, Mike Aulby, on the phone. And Chad, go ahead.
A little bit off topic here, but we're airing a clip right now of you bowling in the hallway on David Letterman. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was quite the experience that came out of nowhere in 1989. I was having would eventually be Bowler of the Year that year, but it was August of '89, and the PBA got a phone call and said that David Letterman was looking for a pro bowler to have on TV that had never cashed before. And so they said, well, we've got a guy from Indianapolis where David's from who's having a great year this year. Would that be all right? So the Letterman show thought that'd be a great idea. And they called me and asked if I'd like to participate. And first thing I thought was, well, how bad am I going to get browbeat on this show? But I agreed to it, and I thought, well, maybe being from Indianapolis, he'd be nice to me, and he was everything like that. I mean, when I went there the first time, it was really cool because I get in there and so they're explaining to me how it's all going to work, and you can see we're bowling in the hallway, and
yeah,
rehearsal was at.
It's quite hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, it was funny because we're in the hallway. It's of course a linoleum floor, and they wanted to see how quickly they could get things cleaned up and set up between, so they knew when the show was going how it would work. Mm-hmm. So they set up. You can see the tape, and they set up the tape. Then they had light standards set up behind the pins. And they had big, long stands basically with lights on them to set those up. And I said, well, the ball's going to take those out. And they said, well, we'll move them. So they moved them back. I said, no, you don't understand. They're going to take them out. Uh-huh. So they said, no, well, let's just throw one and see. And then the guys are standing right behind the pins. I said, unless you want broken legs, you're going to need to move out of the way because those pins are over 3 pounds and they're going to fly. So they moved. And I said, no, a little far. So they finally moved out of the way. First shot I throw, both light stands go flying out of the way, break the lights. The guys went running because the pins were flying all over the place. So then they hung the lights up in the ceiling tiles, and they finally got everything out of the way. So they finally figured out how it worked. But then they wanted to try, after bowling pins, they wanted to try it one more time with the beer bottles. And when I threw the shot, I hit it, and those bottles exploded. Well, they were pulling glass slivers out of the ceiling tiles because they just exploded. And then when they'd roll the ball back to me, I had to use my foot because it's embedded with glass.
Wow.
So it was quite interesting figuring out what they were going to do. And then, of course, you saw some of the different items they used. And they had me – that was the first one. And then they had me back at Christmas time. Yeah. And I shot Christmas items. Then they had me back for Easter items later. And then a couple years later, Dick Weber took over when they had him outside and AMF put the lanes in and that. But it was a blast. I mean, I had so much fun. He was very nice when we talked about the city, and they were just very, very cool. I mean, the one – couple of things with that was my favorite ones were the lighted choir boys where the heads popped up off when I hit them, and then
Christmas ornaments, right?
Yeah, Christmas time, and it was amazing because each time I was on the show the next day at the airport, I mean, it was amazing how many people stopped you. Hey, were you the guy on TV last night? And stuff like that. And the one time David Letterman asked me how it was going, the people mentioned the show. I said, oh, I was pleasantly surprised how much people talked. He said, all right, I'll do the jokes here. So it was pretty
very funny, but great time. I mean, total blast. And you know, it's funny. The kids were, you know, at the ice rink that we own, the kids that work for us, they all get those YouTube videos out, and it's pretty funny.
I noticed on a couple of shots, there was obviously a solid line of black tape. It must have been to kind of give you an idea. You got it outside of that tape, and it was out of bounds. I noticed it didn't come back.
Well, you know what was about that? It was funny because I told them, I said, if you guys move me closer, I can hit these things all the time. And Letterman said, no, it wouldn't be realistic. He said, it's got to be the same length as a bowling lane. And he said, we can put down sand or oil, whatever you think you need to make it realistic. We'll do it. I said, well, just give me some more practice shots. And the thing was, the harder when you threw it harder, the ball rolled out and faded left. And if you threw it softer, it picked up on the linoleum and hooked to the right. I mean, it was one of the tougher conditions I'd had.
I just, there's just something about rolling a ball down and knocking over 10 bottles of ketchup or, pitchers of beverage or whatever. It's actually
it's something you can't, you can only dream about those days. There was even an aquarium full of guacamole at one point.
Oh my goodness. That's kind of funny. We also showed a little bit of highlights, too, from your time bowling outdoors, I believe, at the Villages, wasn't it? The Sun
Villages,
Bowl?
Villages, right.
Yeah. How was it like bowling outdoors? You look like Pete Weber. You had your sunglasses on, right?
Yeah, I was styling that day, right? So, the outdoor ones were quite interesting. I mean, that one, especially at the Villages, was right in the middle of their kind of the center of their square. They'd had a trolley would come by every 20 minutes and ring its bell, even while we're on the show. And then, of course, right before the show came on, it rained. A brief shower came through. You want to talk about approaches that were about as sticky as they're going to get in Florida. 80 some degrees when the sun came back out and humidity. Oh man, it was all you could do to hold your ACL and your MCL together on those shots.
Oh, wow. Well,
but I didn't last too long. I only won one match, and then I think it was Weber beat me, so I wasn't out that long.
Now, one thing that people don't realize too, if you've never been to a live show for the PBA Tour, there's a lot that goes on before the TV show begins. I mean, you guys get immense amount of practice. I mean, how were you guys seeing, like, in the sun? How much was because obviously it's going to be warm down there. Was it affecting the lane patterns quite a bit, or?
Oh, a lot, yeah. And then, of course, once the rain came through, then, it was right before the show started, so then they had to re-oil. So all your practice balls basically went out the window of what you learned. So, but, and like I said, when you're in a square like that in the middle of, like, a little city or a little town, the people are moving. There's people moving everywhere. So, it takes all you can take to keep the concentration going and that sort of thing. I mean, I had bowled on one other one outdoors, was really as an exhibition for Brunswick over in Rimini, Italy. And they built one lane on the beach, and they put it in a small tent. And that was quite interesting, too, with the sand blowing across the lanes, and that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I would be worried about the sand blowing across the approaches and making it.
No kidding.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah,
it looks good, but it's not ideal.
Well, as a bowler, I'm sure you might fall in this category. You either want to know one of two things. Am I going to slide or am I going to stick? I need to know one or the other. It can't be – I can't get a combination of both, because then that's when you kind of get unsure what you're going to do.
Exactly. As long as you can prepare for it, that's the key.
Right. Well, I know a couple of things before we let you get out here and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, but you're currently president of the Bowling Museum and Hall of Fame. What are all your duties involved with that position?
Well, with that, I mean, I basically we have our board of directors and I oversee our staff, and one of the things we try to do in the last 2 or 3 years since I got on, I mean, the museum was basically always trying to just make enough money to keep the doors open. And, in the last 2 or 3, 4 years now, we've got the backing of the USBC and the BPAA. And so now we've gone on a strong push for collecting to make sure that we are protecting and preserving our history, not only of the sport, but of the industry. And so that's kind of where our big push is now. And so we basically had the Hall of Fame Classic back in January, which was our first fundraiser of the year, thanks to the PBA and Tom Clark and everybody involved with that one. And but we're missed a couple of our big events, which would have been our extravaganza tournament here at the end of May, which has been canceled until next year at the Red Rock. It's just a great tournament, good fundraiser. And then our big raffle we always do at Bowl Expo, obviously has been canceled as well. So we're going to try to come up with some things. Hopefully we can maybe come up with some sort of charity auction in the fall that maybe benefits the museum and some of the bowling charities around too, so that we can help people kind of get back swing of things.
Yeah, well, besides the Hall of Fame, and obviously we know you're quite involved with hockey, and you have the rinks down in the Carmel area. What other hobbies are you involved in that kill some of your time?
I'm a big collector. I've always collected, whether it's sporting things, baseball things, bowling things, memorabilia, things like that. I've always been involved in that sort of stuff. Now it's basically just run the businesses, and I have gotten more involved with back in the industry again with the Hall of Fame and Museum, and Bowl Expo week, missing that favorite week of the year, just to get to see so many people, and through the years of being on tour and that, and it's really just connecting with people, and for me, just trying to stay involved.
What would getting to some of your collections? What would be one of your more prized possessions?
I actually have every ball I've ever shot 300 or won a title with, or 800. I've kept them all. So I have those, and one nice little, and I have probably about almost 10 of the shirts that I've used in some of those titles, and that I got things like my first when I joined the PBA to have 3 signatures. Well, Dick Weber was one of them, and so that's always cool, and things like that. I mean, it's just I've been fortunate through the year to always been a collector. So I have pins from all my major title wins except for the first one. When I won my 20th title, I took all 40 pins out of the rack and put them on to displays, and had a nice saying to the people who helped me through my career, and sent those out to all the people that had helped me. And so I've always been a collector. So I'm always my eyes that are always out looking. So being part of the museum is fun, because that's just what I enjoy to do.
Yeah, especially when you can go around, and I know you were saying how some of the cool things that you guys are able to acquire, and obviously.
Oh, it's just awesome. Yeah, it really is. And it's the story behind them is great. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And I don't bowl much anymore, so I do bowl the USBC tournament. I missed last year with a bad back, but I was looking forward to bowling this year. The opening, we always usually bowl the opening weekend, and just basically with some of the dignitaries from our industry, Frank DeSocio from the BPAA, and my doubles partner is Bill Crispin from Storm. So I was talking to Bill a couple of days ago, and him and Barb are doing great. And so it's just just trying to keep track of everybody, and it's always a fun weekend. It's not about the Eagles anymore, trust me. It's about the memories. So
right, absolutely. And Mike, we always appreciate your time, and obviously we look forward to having you do some more color commentary with us, and obviously as a bowling fan yourself, we're looking forward to some sense of normalcy here soon, and stay safe.
Oh, I appreciate it, Chad and Scott. Thank you so much once again for all you do, and for everybody that hung on and was in the live chat room. It was great to follow some of the questions and stuff. And if you need anything else in the future, let me know. But thanks for doing what you're doing. We greatly appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Mike Aulby, everyone. And Mike, such a class act, and always enjoy hearing some of his stories from his days on the PBA Tour. And there's some great ones, and obviously we just kind of touched upon a few things.
Yeah.
And
we spent a lot of time with him over the last year or so, and we've heard some of them. They're great. There's some good stories.
Well, it's been such a great show, our first one of hopefully some more here. Obviously, we wanted to take some time out of everyone's day here to bring some fun, and actually have some fun ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad, obviously we want everybody to become a subscriber. You want to go ahead and tell them how they can connect with Savage Bowling TV?
Yeah, obviously we have our YouTube, which you're watching right now or listening to. Subscribe to YouTube. You can hit the bell on the YouTube channel to let you know when we post a new video. We're also on Facebook. Just search Savage Bowling TV on Facebook, and we're at Savage Bowling TV on Twitter. You can follow us on all those, and that would be great.
Yeah, and share some ideas with us if there's things that you would like to see guest to have on future shows, let us know. We'll try to reach out to those people and get them on one of our basement interview episodes. Again, we'd like to thank our guests, Brian Nunning, Scott Devers, Mark Sullivan, EJ Tackett, Mike Dole, Brad Miller, and Mike Aulby. We hope you enjoyed spending a little time with us and we could take your mind off the current stressful life we're in. When we go back to whatever normal may become, make sure you go out and support your local bowling center. Now more than ever, the bowling community needs to come together. For Chad Lester, I'm Scott Gilmore. Thanks for watching. Savage Bowling. Yeah. Savage Bowling TV. Rob Stone, he's really good.